morning. Today is Monday, February 23rd, 2026. This Committee of Finance, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is called to order. Madam Clerk, call the roll. Here. Present. Thank you. We do have a few pieces of legislation that we have emergency that have to be heard. Before I hear them, I do want to understand the explanation. Is my understanding through our staff and team that we have repeatedly reached out to try to work these pieces through the process, and now we're faced with a deadline that if we don't pass these 6 pieces of legislation, we stand the chance to lose some significant money. I need to understand why did we, for whatever reason, delay these, and then also why is it so urgent that we actually accept these money in order for us to be able to make these improvements?
Yes, sir. Jamie DeRosa, the Director of Capital Projects. Just to introduce folks with me, Rick Switowski, the Manager of Engineering and Construction on my right, and Katie Moore is the Manager of Special Projects, also in MOCAP to my left. So we have 6 pieces here today, and we do appreciate council hearing them. A situation arose where we're in a time crunch with ODOT because of a couple of things. One is that the normal process is that when a project is close to being bid, ODOT sends us a request for consent legislation. That's what all 6 of these are, is consent legislation, which is consenting to allow ODOT to build in our right-of-way. And these projects all came in just before council recess, which you recess the 1st or the 2nd of December, or they came in over council recess. And the length of time it takes for us to put in a request for legislation to the point when it gets ready for committees was such that we would miss all of ODOT's deadlines for these projects, which would require ODOT to delay the bidding of the projects to a future quarter or a future fiscal year, which would either jeopardize funding. I doubt that we would actually lose the funding, but it's also possible that bids would go up because as time goes on, the cost of construction does go up. And we know this really puts council in a bad position to pivot from council hearings for the budget to legislative hearings. But I will say that ODOT has given us an extension for all of the deadlines to get this legislation passed to March 3rd. And so we know that there's a waiting period after passage for when the mayor would sign, and then to get the clerk of council to give us a signed piece of legislation, which is what ODOT needs. So that's why we're seeking passage tonight, so that that waiting period and signature can take place this week. We can get everything over to ODOT and meet our March 3rd deadline. There's a meeting that we have scheduled on March 10th with ODOT where we're looking at how to restructure the legislative process related to their projects, because even though we turned around the request for legislation usually within a few days to a week to maybe 10 days after we receive the request from ODOT, we're talking to ODOT about how we can pass legislation earlier in the project. That may require 2 pieces of legislation to be passed, just so council's aware. So we would pass consent legislation earlier in the project, and then we would pass legislation with the budget that the amount the city would have to pay to ODOT for our local share closer to the date of bidding. But that legislation would not be required prior to bidding. It's something that we could get in the hopper prior to awarding the contract. So we're trying to resolve this issue, but right now we're in a situation with 6 pieces of legislation where we're seeking council's assistance.
Well, this seems similar to some of the other issues that we spoke about with this council, where it seems they have been stuck in administrative review or some reason or another. And this is where we got to really start identifying, to many of my colleagues' points in the last week or so, that we need to have a point person that's pushing these projects through and really tracking where they're at, because it looks like you send it to administrative review, and then because nobody really kept pushing or tracking, other things happened, and this didn't have the sense of urgency that it needed. So I don't ever believe in trying to hurt the public, because that's who stands to lose if these projects are jeopardized. And I do want to thank the three colleagues that did move them to, or the two committees that did allow the move to relieve these pieces. That is municipal services and properties, Councilman Bishop, development planning and sustainability, Councilwoman Santana, and then also transportation and mobility with Councilman Slife, because we don't want to even jeopardize getting money from ODOT for some of these critical projects. So what I'll do is I'll read these into the record, and then if any of my colleagues have any questions, we'll go from there, okay? This is ordinance number 35-2026 as amended by Councilmember Santana, Bishop, Slife, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance giving consent of the City of Cleveland to the Director of Transportation of the State of Ohio to rehabilitate the old Detroit Road Bridge, accepting gifts and grants, acquiring, accepting, and recording necessary right-of-way, and authorizing agreements. And the amendment states: there is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. In Section 9, at the end, add, in quotations, RQS 0103 RLA 2025-134, in quotations. This is dated 2/9/26 by Patricia McGinty Aston. The second piece that I will read into the record is ordinance number 36-2026 by Council Members House, Jones, Bishop, and Griffin by departmental request, and emergency ordinance giving consent of the City of Cleveland to the Director of Transportation of the State of Ohio to construct multimodal transportation enhancements along East 66th Street from Chester Avenue to Superior Avenue, accepting gifts and grants, acquiring, accepting, and recording necessary rights of way, authorizing agreements, and causing payment to the state of the city's share of the improvement. Ordinance number 71-2026 by council members Bishop, Slife, Santana, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance giving consent of the City of Cleveland to the Director of Transportation of the State of Ohio to construct the improvement of CUY Memorial Bridges Loop Project, accepting gifts and grants, acquiring, accepting, and recording necessary rights of way, authorizing agreements, and causing payment to the state for the city's share of the improvement. Ordinance number 90-2026 by council members Polensek, Bishop, Santana, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance giving consent to the City of Cleveland to the Director of Director of Transportation of the State of Ohio to repair and resurface South Waterloo Road from East 140th Street to East 152nd Street, accepting gifts and grants, acquiring, accepting, and recording necessary rights of way, authorizing agreements, and causing payment to the state for the city's share of the improvement. Ordinance number 91-2026 by council members Gray, Bishop, Santana, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance giving consent of the City of Cleveland to the Director of Transportation of the State of Ohio to construct the improvement of resurfacing Aken Boulevard, accepting gifts and grants, acquiring, accepting, and recording necessary rights of way, authorizing agreements, and causing payment for the State of Ohio's share of the improvement. Last but not least, ordinance number 122-2026 by council members Bishop, Santana, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance giving consent of the City of Cleveland to the Director of Transportation of the State of Ohio to construct the CUY Cleveland Downtown Connector Trail 1 project, accepting gifts and grants, acquiring, accepting, and recording necessary rights of way, authorizing an agreement with the Village of Newburgh Heights, and authorizing other agreements, and causing payment to the state for the city's share of the improvement. All right, those are the pieces of legislation. Director, did you want to give any further explanation on these?
Mr. Chairman, we do have a PowerPoint to go through each of the projects, but I'm not sure that council.
Very brief if you could,
Okay.
because we do have to get back into budget.
Yep, exactly. So we'll go through the PowerPoints, and maybe primarily we'll focus on the location of these improvements, and the budget and the schedule. Rick is going to start out with the first project, which is Old Detroit Bridge.
Thank you. Old Detroit Bridge is located underneath, it's underneath Old Detroit Avenue and Riverbed Road. It's actually by the Stonehill.
Could you talk into the mic?
It's actually next to the Stonebridge Apartments. The parking lot for Stonebridge, when they built it, they actually bulkheaded that side of the bridge and then backfilled it somewhat, built their parking lot on it. So that's where it's located. It's adjacent to Centennial Trail and to the Irishtown Bend. Here you can see the twin barrel brick arch bridge. It was built in 1853. The Erie-Lackawanna Railroad passed under Old Detroit Bridge to access the Port of Cleveland. Ceased operation in 1876. The project scope will include clearing and grubbing, drainage, fill the tunnel with grout, basically entombing it. It'll take it off our bridge inventory, so we don't have to worry about it anymore in terms of rehabilitation. We'll repair and seal the sandstone walls, install new guardrail and fencing. Construction estimate is $1.725 million, which we received through a federal municipal bridge fund grant. Construction should begin in August of 2026 and can be completed in August 27. Sorry. Questions?
Councilman Michael Polensek.
Where do the tunnels go to, Mr. Chairman, at this point?
Nowhere.
They're
They're
just- bulkheaded.
They're bulkheaded right underneath the parking lot. They bulkheaded them there, backfilled them with construction debris. We're going to fill it all with grout, bring it to about 10 feet from the face of the arches.
Okay,
And
thank you.
basically entomb it, take it off our bridge inventory.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, please move forward.
Thank you. So next, Katie Moore is going to go through the East 66th Street project.
Our East 66th Street project is on East 66th Street from Chester to Superior. We previously completed the Euclid to Chester portion in partnership with the Cleveland Foundation. So I know previously you've seen that we were going from Euclid all the way to Superior, so that is why the limits are slightly shorter. The roadway improvements is a full and partial base repairs for the road, all the sidewalks, curbs, aprons, making sure they are all modernized, adding a shared use path on one side of the street, and a lot of landscaping. We're really thinking of this as being a complete street project, bringing some curb appeal to the neighborhood. And notably, which is at the end of the slide deck, if you want to review it on your time, we provided some renderings, some images of what the Chester intersection will look like. If you've been through that area, you can almost drive right through without ever seeing it. So that's one of our areas that we focused on with this project. Our cost of this project right now is about $8.8 million, and that is due to some federal funds being available and the Cleveland Foundation making funds available, and then also in our CIP we have road and bridge bonds. An update is that we found out in early February that our project was still on a community funding list for the federal government. We put this project on the list in 2024, and luckily Congresswoman Brown kind of never gave up on it and kept pushing it through, so we are so excited that we received additional funds for the project. However, that means we are uncertain of the actual start date for construction. We're going to do everything that we can to get the federal authorization to move those funds into the project as quickly as possible. But I did want to be clear that we are not sure when it's going to start, and we're working with all of our partners to bring that money in. And that's just a nice picture of everyone. And here's some renderings. Like I said, that this shows all of the vegetation that we're adding to the street, along with parking. And this shows our Chester intersection improvements.
And I would like to thank Councilwoman House Jones. I know she's not here, but you'll recall a couple years ago in the operating budget, she set aside money for the design of this project. So about $1.1 million came from operating budget into the design of the project. Cleveland Foundation invested $2 million into the project. Now with Representative Chantel Brown, another $1.885 million into the project. So this really has been a community effort. And just to highlight, ever since COVID, I've been involved on this project with the community. Former director Joyce Wong was at Midtown at the time, and we've really kept the public involved this entire time. So it's really a tribute to the public for keeping engaged as well, and we're happy we can bring this forward.
Right. Just so I take that as Councilwoman House Jones is in support of this project.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Councilman Christopher Harsh.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through the chair, as you're doing all the infrastructure work on the street, did anybody look at the cost of doing the taps for the water and the sewer? Because there's a lot of vacant land on this street that potentially new houses could be built on. Did we look at doing that infrastructure work as well?
So through the chairman and the councilman, so as I understand it, the catch with that is that Cleveland Water needs someone to be responsible for that tap, meaning whether it's a nonprofit or an individual, but they need to have an account associated with the tap. So if those vacant lots are in the land bank, for instance, that poses a problem because the city of Cleveland, the land bank is not able to be the customer, if you will, for Cleveland Water. So we're working through that to try to figure out a way to have a customer to allow water to put in taps. But on this roadway, that hasn't been worked out yet. But I know with modular housing, they're trying to figure out a way to get over that.
Through the chair, is that the case even if the tap is capped?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Councilman Michael Polensky.
Mr. Chairman, to my honorable colleagues, to Chris, you brought up a very valid point, and I've been going around with utilities on this myself, where we have these vacant lots, where the storms, the sanitary sewer / storm sewer should have been capped adequately and brought up, a pipe brought up to the surface so you know where the sewer's at. And then on the water lines, I have empty lots where we were redoing a street, putting in a new water line, and I asked them to put the taps in where the vacant lots were, and they wouldn't do it. And I said, Habitat is looking at the street to put up new houses. What are we, nuts here? Put the taps in now, and they would not do them. On a street that was already opened up, the new water line, they would not put the taps in. So this is a discussion we're going to have here, because we work against ourselves here. This is working against the members of City Council, and development and utilities has got to get on board with this stuff. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Please proceed.
Yes, sir. So the next ordinance relates to Memorial Bridges Loop project, which Katie will also go through quickly.
Memorial Bridges Loop is a loop in downtown in Ohio City. It is one of our most popular routes for cyclists and pedestrians who are using it for recreation. That route has been available for some time through some different running groups use it, and they put it online. It travels across the Detroit Superior Bridge, kind of down around Huron, back across the Lorraine Carnegie Bridge, and then along 25th. So I will show you, we are looking to construct the portion of this loop that would connect to the existing infrastructure on the Detroit Superior Bridge. It would carry a multi-use path on Huron Road at a street level with buffering, with delineators. And then we'd bring everyone up onto sidewalk level on Huron by pulling out the Huron curb and making enough space for that multi-use path to go down to, if you're familiar with the Bedrock project where they're reconstructing Eagle Avenue, this would carry you all the way to where that project would pick up at Eagle Avenue, and then to the existing multi-use path that then goes across the Lorraine Carnegie Bridge. Oh, I walked you through this, but this gives you a little bit more of the dimensions and specifics about the path. And we are fully funded for the project. We received earmark funding, so this one has funding that must be put into a project before the end of September. Otherwise, that earmark funding is potentially lost to the city. So this one we do need to push forward on. It will be one season of construction. We're looking at starting in June and being done by November, which means the path would be fully available for the community to use next year, or anyone that likes to run in the winter. Here are some renderings showing how you would transition from Detroit Avenue, the Superior Bridge, over onto Huron, and down to the corner with Ontario, up onto the sidewalk level facility and down to Eagle.
So, a couple of questions. A few of us have been really trying to look and follow what the Bedrock Project is doing. And one of the things that's become eerily evident is that all of the different plans and the different strategies have not coordinated or talked with each other. When you're talking about putting this kind of infrastructure in, one, have you talked to Bedrock? And then number two, is this going to be the beneficiary of some of those TIF proceeds when the vertical construction starts to happen, that it begins to get monetized and it's still going to be one of the projects? And how are we going to calculate how many projects we're dealing with the TIF district if this is going to be one of them?
So, Mr. Chairman, I can confirm that we have absolutely coordinated this with the Bedrock team. We have someone in MoCap specifically focused on the Bedrock project, and she works hard to coordinate all of our projects with the Bedrock team. And I can say that we've coordinated everything from where our project specifically ends, how it interfaces with their current construction, and how the work in their construction zone is going to be completed when they're done with Eagle Avenue. So this has been highly coordinated. It is not intended for funding through the TIF district. This was funded through, as we said, an earmark and capital bonds. And I can't say that I know exactly how all of the TIF district money is being programmed, but this is outside of that programming. I will also highlight that our coordinator for the Bedrock project really helps coordinate all the issues that might interface with Bedrock, whether it's neighbors down on the lower end of the project, whether it's engineering issues, or whether it's interfacing with city planning or with permitting. So we're really soup to nuts doing a good job of coordinating Bedrock with other plans in the city.
Well, I'm going to ask our staff to team up with your staff, because one of the things I think is going to be imperative to the public is to truly track which dollars are being used for what. Because a lot of our projects have a tendency, one, to be piecemealed as far as how they're being funded. So a lot of times we think we're going one direction and we're funding this under this, like you said, NOACA and some of these other sources, and then we'll find out later that, oh, well, we need, some of the monetization off of the TIF to be able to be utilized towards some of this stuff too. And we need to be able to track that and be able to understand that so that we can make sure that we're balanced in our approach and not starving ourselves in other areas when we're trying to make investments, okay?
Mr. Chairman, yes, please just let us know who your contact is. We recently gave Councilman Davis a briefing on the Bedrock project, and we're happy to do that for whoever your contact is.
That'd be great, because one of the things that I continue to get, and we get it all the time, I know that Councilman Polisic said it last week, we then go to walk downtown, or we go to an event, and then everybody say this one-way street and these barriers are horrible, or these delineators are horrible, and nobody has a conversation, and then we get the pushback because we're actually out there interacting with people, and people are not happy about one-ways and some of this other traffic patterns. So it's important to have more communication up front than on the back end, so that nobody is exposed to the process, okay?
Understood.
The other thing that I've noticed with some of our projects, and I apologize for taking just a brief moment of personal privilege, but we have a lot of these plans that we get money for, and then they become unfunded mandates because for whatever reason they fall off as a priority. Case in point, Thrive 10593, which we started in a direction to put a significant amount of money into that capital improvement. And then I have just not heard any updates about that in the last 2 years. And I mean, that's not, when we start to communicate with the public and start to put the framework of funding in place, and then to find out that somebody doesn't have the same sense of urgency, is kind of frustrating.
And Mr. Chairman, Thrive 105 is, we're in conversations with NOACA on how to spend the money that's been allocated on the needs that the community currently has. As you know, the northern portion is already basically complete, doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but we're looking at 105th Street South, and we're looking, we won't get into all the details here, but we're looking at how to use the money that we have in the area that needs the most enhancements that relate to the CMAQ funding, and that would include the area where Woodhill Choice is. to coordinate our work on that phase of the project with the Woodhill Choice Works. So once we have an idea of how that might work, then we will come to you in the community and, you first, obviously, and brief you on it. But the project is not dead. It's definitely morphed into something that's more related to the southern portion, though.
And hopefully we can get our roundabout that we've been trying to advocate for, but we'll see. Okay. All right, any other questions regarding this? All right, please proceed.
So the next ordinance relates to South Waterloo Road, and Rick will go through this PowerPoint quickly.
Thank you. This project is South Waterloo from East 140th to 152nd. It also includes the ramps to and from Waterloo Road. It's in Ward 10, Councilmember Polensic's. Includes resurfacing of 0.7 miles of South Waterloo, including ramps to and from Waterloo, as I mentioned, full and partial base repairs and complete asphalt resurfacing, new sidewalk curbs, ADA compliant ramps as needed, casting adjustments and pavement marking and signal upgrades. Funding is $1.3 million, which includes $879,000 of NOACA STBG and $466,000 of the local share. Construction should start in May of 2026. Questions?
Any questions, Councilman Michael Polensik?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable colleagues. Obviously, the road certainly needs it. It's in bad shape. But my question is this. Why isn't this the responsibility, the marginal roads and the ramps, the responsibility of ODOT? Why are we have to eat this when we didn't construct it?
The city is responsible for the roadways in the right-of-way. If there's anything in the LA, the limited access area, that would be ODOT's responsibility. What you're referring to is in the right-of-way, so the city has to take care of it.
So you're telling me that on all these marginal roads throughout the city, that we are totally on the hook.
Yes, sir.
Man,
And Mr. Chairman, even if it's a state route, the state would give us money, not a lot of money, but the state would give us money to make repairs to the roadway. So even if it's a state route, it's still the city's responsibility.
okay, but you're indicating this, the ramps will get done as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support it wholeheartedly.
All right, thank you. Any other questions regarding this? All right, please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, so the next one relates to Van Aken Boulevard, which Rick will go through the PowerPoint.
Passed it, sorry. Next one is Van Aken Boulevard from South Woodland to Shaker Boulevard. It's in Ward 3, Councilmember Gray's ward. Very similar to the previous project. It's full and partial base repairs, complete asphalt resurfacing, new sidewalk curbs and ADAs were needed, utility casting adjustments, pavement markings. Cost estimates about $1.33 million. We have $1.06 million from the NOACA STBG funding and $266,000 from the local share. Should start construction in May of 2026.
And Mr. Chairman, I wanted to highlight that we've been working with RTA to resurface the areas on either side of their tracks on both Shaker Boulevard and Van Aken, which is a really rough patch if you've gone through there. So RTA will be doing that during a summer shutdown period, and that'll be in coordination with our work on Van Aken.
Good. I'm going to pivot to Councilwoman Gray if she has any comments.
Thank you, Chair. The only comment I have is about time. That's the comment. And every resident over there said about time. So we're happy to know that this work is going to be done to be the completion, hopefully the completion of Shaker Square that you guys still have to come back and resurface, correct? Remember the project 2 or 3 years ago you done with the whole resurfacing from Northmoreland to Livingston, and you still have to come back and complete Shaker Square, as well as doing this Van Aken project, but also in addition doing the east and west of Shaker Boulevard from 116th to Coventry. So when are you going to come back and finish Shaker Square? Is it going to be before this project, or are you going to finish Shaker Square? Chair to Director.
Through the councilwoman, yes, Shaker Boulevard from the east corporate limit all the way, the whole length will be done after Van Aken, and I believe it's next year for construction. So it would be 2027 for construction for Shaker Boulevard, both sides of it, the whole length.
Yeah, we got funded that through the Ohio Public Works Committee.
Yes, and thank you for that. But going back to the resurfacing from Northmoreland to Livingston, you guys still have to complete Shaker Square resurfacing. Did you finish that project? Because you know you had to divide that up on Northmoreland, then the quadrants, and then Shaker Square was going to be last for the resurfacing. Is that
Director?
Is that part of the quads? Is that part of the quads per se?
Through the chairman of the councilwoman, my understanding is that only Shaker Boulevard through the square needs resurfaced.
Okay.
And that portion of Shaker Square is part of the Shaker Boulevard project.
Okay.
If there's anything else around the quadrants that you have a concern about, let me know. And my understanding, though, is that the around the square is done. It's just through the square that needs to be resurfaced, and that's part of our Shaker Boulevard project for next year.
Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to be on the same page because we wasn't sure if all the quads from the west to the east side was done with the resurfacing project 2 years ago. So that is all done, Chair, to the director.
Through the chairman of the councilwoman, that's my understanding, but why don't I go out and make sure? But my understanding is the quadrants are done. It's just the through street of Shaker that needs to be done.
Okay, all right. So I'm pleased. Thank you, Chair, to the director.
And just to be clear, because I know the councilwoman and I share that, you're saying that they are done, meaning that there is a funding source, or that they've already are done, been resurfaced?
Yeah, so through Mr. Chairman, so the North and South Morelands project included the quadrants that go around the square. Now there's, there's the roadway around the square. There's privately owned head-end parking that's owned by, the owners of Shaker Square. And then there's Shaker Boulevard that goes through the middle of the square. Mm-hmm. So my understanding, and I'll go out and verify, is that all of the quadrants around the square are done, and that it's through the square that we still need to work on. Like I said, I haven't driven the quadrants recently, so I'll make sure. North and South Morelands was finished a few years ago, so I'll have to brush up on the scope, but my understanding is those were finished.
I'll take a ride, because okay, I just know that they're trying to do some other repair work around there, so we'll make sure we take a
but
look. Okay.
Just a reminder, the city does not own the head-in parking.
Yeah, and that's why I want to, maybe that's the part that I'm thinking about, that they're trying to do some repairs and some work.
And we've flagged that for neighborhood progress as privately owned property that would need their
private investment.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yes.
Okay. All right, anything else? All right, I think you have one more.
Yes, sir, just one more. This is the Downtown Connector Trail project, which Katie will present quickly.
Our Downtown Connector Trail is a piece of a much larger trail called the Slavic Village Downtown Connector Trail. This piece begins at Fleet Avenue and runs only a short distance to 48th. This project has been around for a while. We've been trying to figure out with the Metro Parks and ODOT how the construction of this trail will occur. And this is the portion that the city took on. And then ODOT will be constructing the next portion, which runs with the 77 project. And then as part of the Raised Trail bundle that the Metro Parks is managing, that last portion would be all the way to 9th Street where we have existing infrastructure. Currently, we have TAP, Transportation Alternatives funding in this project at almost $1.4 million, and then the city is contributing $346.725. I guess critically, construction is anticipated to start in May and be complete this year, so it is a very short-term project. That's another reason why we're here. We really would like to get this portion of the project finished. Here is a map showing those connections and how our project fits into it. If you see that SVDC South, it's a little tiny orange piece. At the bottom, that is the project that we're speaking about, and the image shows you it'll be this multi-purpose trail, so it'll be a flat, smooth asphalt trail going up to connect to other trails that will carry north. And that is the end of the presentation.
All right, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, not to belabor it, but a lot of these, as you can see, relate to our Cleveland Moves plan. And these are all sort of factored into the connections that we're trying to make for bikes and peds throughout our city.
Okay, thank you. And I know that the Cleveland 2020 plan was unveiled several years ago. Where's that Cleveland Moves plan at that everybody's been talking about?
Through the chairman and the councilman, so Cleveland Moves was through city planning, and so on their website they have a link for Cleveland Moves.
Okay.
And it really talks about walking, biking, rolling throughout the city and how to make stress-free connections.
Okay, all right. Any other questions for these pieces?
I just have one comment.
Councilwoman.
Thank you, Chair. That trail was previously discussed a year ago, and I think our former Councilwoman Mahler was over that. So I really still love the outcome of it. So I think that's part of Ward 3. Is that part of Ward 5? Are you part of that too now? Okay, yes, so I have no objection, so I love the outlook of it, so thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, Councilman?
Yes, just in relate to this ordinance, I would like to be added as a sponsor, and then just for clarification, if there's stuff that is happening in Ward 5, I'd like to be a sponsor added as two, because sometimes I see other different pieces where they have council members in their ward added on it, but sometimes when it comes to in Ward 5, it's as if I'm not a sponsor or as if I'm not in support of the projects when I am. So I definitely want to make that as a point of clarification. If it's something that's happening in Ward 5, I'd like to be added, as well as in the downtown connector, which brushes up against Ward 5, to make sure that we show the support from council as well.
Duly noted. Could you please add both of those to both of those pieces? All right. Anything else? Councilman Bishop?
Are we done reading all these pieces in the record?
Yes.
Mr. President, I just want to express my my feelings and my attitude as it relates to these pieces and relieving them out of my committee. It was with great reluctance that I relieved these pieces from my committee. If it wasn't for my unwavering commitment and my to the city, to the residents of the city of Cleveland, everybody in the Shaker Square area who used that corridor, everybody who uses who will eventually use the paths and the trails that we're going to erect throughout Ohio City, the area in Councilman Polensik's area, and all of these folks that use these, the Cleveland Foundation, the Dave's grocery store down in the East 66 area, and everybody who uses that corridor, if it wasn't for my desire to provide the best services and the best environment for everybody in those corridors, I would have not relieved these pieces out of my committee. I think I have shortchanged, especially our new members who have not been able to vet these pieces of legislation and understand how this process works. I feel like I have shortchanged my new members. Regardless of the dollar amount, I still believe that it is according to the charter, we have to weigh in on these pieces and every one of these pieces in City Hall. And it is not, I have not done this for any department and any person in City Hall. It was just for the residents of the city of Cleveland. One of council's core functions is fiscal and operational oversight. The Municipal Services and Property Committee has been acting in good faith to aid MOCAP in accounting for public's money and acting expeditiously so not to delay critical improvement projects. Mr. President, it appears that these projects had been down in City Hall for quite a few months. And I think ODOT had made clear its timelines and its intentions to get these pieces moved throughout the City Hall process. This is not our process, and this is not how we do business, especially the Municipal Service and Properties Committee, and especially in the middle of budget hearings, which is another core function of the City Council. So I got a few questions, and I'm not going to go on and on about how relieving these pieces really flips my committee's function upside down. But I want to ask these questions. It appears that the city has already been granted an extension from ODOT. Is this correct?
Through the chairman and the councilman, yes, they've given us an extension to March 3rd to provide a signed piece of legislation by the clerk of council.
And these pieces were scheduled to and relieved from 3 other committees. Many of these projects are being funded by the 2026 CIP plan, which council has not yet approved. We are rushing through our process so that we won't lose out on nearly $9 million in state and federal funds. In the future, we request that you streamline the administrative process, because next time we will not sacrifice our process due to diligence if the administration has not made effort to act with urgency. Have any other department within the City Hall been asked to expedite this process other than the City Council? Mr. President.
Through the chairman and the councilman, first I'll say for the CIP, these were all projects were on the carryover from the 2025 to 2026. And being the first year that we tried this new process, these projects were ended up being funded in the wrong project year. And that's due to a change of timing from ODOT from when we needed to provide the legislation, as well as this change of system of how we fund projects. But these were all intended to be funded in the 2025 CIP, and they ended up in the carryover into 2026. And I do recognize that the timing of all of this is very unusual. Have we asked other parts of City Hall to move these forward quickly? Yes, we have. What happened, though, is that the few of these that were submitted prior to council recess, there was not enough time to have them put the request in, have legislation drafted, and have it introduced before council recessed. And those that came in during council shutdown, as you know, finance department is also shut down during those periods. But we received 3 of these on December 31st of 2025, New Year's Eve, with the request that these were passed. I don't remember the original passage date, but I believe it was in February, which I'm not trying to throw ODOT under the bus or say that I shouldn't have done better, but those are unreasonable expectations. But what we have is the city of Cleveland has our fiscal year that ends on a calendar year, and we have ODOT whose fiscal year ends at the end of June. They have a brief shutdown then. That's why they load projects into the system at the end of the calendar year, which is the opposite of what we're able to process quickly. So we missed one opportunity, which was a few of these could have been presented at Planning Commission early. And that's on me for not getting 3 of these through Planning Commission early, because that would have allowed me to present at your committee before budget hearings. The other 3 were on a trajectory that they couldn't have been presented because they weren't even introduced in time to hit any of the committees that you've had one committee before budget hearings, and those 3 would not have even hit your committee. So I hear you. My apologies. And this is not the way that I anticipate moving forward in the future. And as mentioned, we're working with ODOT, meeting with them on March 10th to figure out a new way to pass two pieces of legislation so that we'll alleviate the time crunch right before bidding of a project.
Mr. President, I also want to ask this question. In the communications you shared with us, Director, I see that the state has already shifted several of these projects to fiscal year 27. Can you estimate what are the additional costs for these projects since they will be delayed?
Mr. Chairman, so fiscal year 2027 starts July 1st of 2026. So the issue with shifting from one fiscal year to the other is that those are considered carryover projects for ODOT, which means that they can't take them off their books in the year that they intend. And the primary issue is that with NOACA, it also shows that NOACA-funded projects are not being completed on time. I can get back to you if we have a budget increase for those that are being shifted, but we do not have a current cost estimate of any cost increases at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. As you can see, there was a lot of consternation. I'll be honest with you, we really struggled with whether or not we could release these. But as I said, and as my colleague eloquently said, we're not going to make people hurt by losing a $9 million project. So I know that we've had several conversations with the mayor as well as Mr. Culp. We got to be tighter as far as how we get these, how we get the information. Council is an essential part of oversight in Cleveland City Hall, so we have to get and respect our process, okay? All right, any other questions? Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 35, 2026 as amended stands approved. Ordinance number 36-2026 stands approved. Ordinance number 71-2026 stands approved. Ordinance number 90-2026 stands approved. Ordinance number 91-2026 stands approved. Ordinance number 122-2026 stands approved. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As I'm signing off on these, I'll bring Director Cole up to the table. This is for intro and passage. These are union contracts that have been ratified. This is ordinance number 238-2026 by Councilmember Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance approving the collective bargaining agreement with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, IAMAW, Local 439, and to amend Section 17 of Ordinance Number 194-2021, passed March 29, 2021, as amended, relating to compensation for various departments. Director.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. Yes, this legislation is to ratify the collective bargaining agreement with the machinists and amend the associated pay band Section 17 that's associated with the classifications for this collective bargaining agreement. Tentative agreement was reached on the 14th of January. It was ratified on the 28th of January. Bargaining unit has approximately 30 individuals employed. Some of the notable changes or outcomes of collective bargaining included adding the election day holiday to the holiday section, making the vacation section comparable with non-bargaining, including some language regarding discussion on insurance rates for the next 3 years, eliminating the need for PDH for lower level discipline, increasing the tool allowance, and the wages being on a 4-3-2 schedule, and then finally increasing the uniform allowance from $175 to $225. But I'm certainly happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions regarding this this ratification of this contract? All right. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 238-2026 stands approved. It will be heard by the entire council this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go back to budget, and I'm going to ask, before we go back to budget, do we have the Boxing and Wrestling Commission here? Because I'd rather knock that out before we get to Building and Housing. Director? Do you have Boxing and Wrestling Commission here before? Because I want to knock down that low-hanging fruit before we go right into Building and Housing. Or you're representing Boxing and Wrestling?
So to the chairman, I'll represent them. They don't have any employees.
All right, if we could, please read Boxing and Wrestling Commission into the
Page
Yes.
89, Boxing and Wrestling Commission. Page 90, staffing, salaries, 2025 unaudited, 0. 2026 budgeted, 27,464. Total expenditures, 2025 unaudited, 47. 2026 budgeted, 31,722. And page 90, staffing, 2025 actual, 0. 2026 budgeted, 3, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director. Please proceed.
Yeah, so to the chair, as mentioned, this is established by ordinance, the Boxing and Wrestling Commission. I think it's been a few years and we haven't had it, staffed at this point. I did have law check into why we have the Boxing and Commission, and it was established by ordinance. I also had them check to see if it was in the charter, and they did not see anything in the charter that required us to have this. So just for council to kind of review, I know we've got a budget in there of about $30,000 if we were to go ahead and staff this with 3 individuals. But just pointing that out, we obviously don't have anybody here to represent them.
So I know that this always comes up every year. Why do we have it if we don't need it?
So to the chair, again, it's by ordinance that we have a Boxing and Wrestling Commission. Council could undo this with a counter ordinance if they wanted to.
So if we wanted to do a counter ordinance, we could actually move it. But we have big events like WWF or WWE or whatever they call it now. We have big events like boxing shows. Is this committee needed in order for us to be able to be sanctioned to do some of those events?
So to the chair, obviously, we haven't had it staffed for a few years. Again, that may be a legal question, but I checked with law before this hearing.
So we haven't spent any money in the past on it, right?
To the chair, at least since I've been here, the last year or two, we have not spent money
The
on this.
only trepidation that I have with just getting rid of it, which is what I've always wanted to understand, and my recommendation to this body would be to consider, even if it's just a placeholder, because what I don't want us to do, and this would be probably a question for the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission, is I don't want to hinder us from major events when we're trying to attract major events. And let's say if we can possibly get a Golden Gloves and everybody say, oops, well, because you guys don't have an infrastructure to sanction a Golden Gloves match, that we can't attract it, which could be millions of dollars. So I just want to, before we just scrap something, I think it'd be imperative for us to talk with the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission as well as law, because I'm okay if we're saving $30,000. I mean, it's not a whole lot of money. However, I do want to make it clear that I don't want to just scrap something that gives us the ability to attract major events.
Yeah, and to the chair, through the chair to the committee, just one other point, that $30,000, if we don't end up spending it like we did in last year, then it just becomes part of the transfer ordinance and goes elsewhere in the city.
Right.
So really, those funds end up getting used anyway.
And that's my thought process. So any other questions? Councilman Richard Starr.
One of the things that I have, my greatest concern with the Boxing and Wrestling Commission is that we're not actually working towards getting this position actually staffed. And I think it does a disservice to our residents. There was a point in time where boxing was a key element inside of our rec centers. Like you brought in from you and Council President from you and Councilwoman Gray, Deborah Gray's neighborhood, we have a boxing world champion that came from this good city. And he went through boxing training in our city, in our rec centers, to become a world champion and actually holding the title as the youngest champion currently right now. And right now, when you talk about my upbringing in Lonnie Burton, we've had Golden Gloves champions throughout. And that is a major problem that is going on that we don't have in our rec center. So when we talk about some of the stuff we discussed last week within the Division of Recs, these type of programs are needed. when we talk about violence prevention, when we're talking about the neighborhood and getting that energy drawn into something positive for those young people, think about the public housing that I represent. How many world champions potentially is in those projects, but then instead of them going to box, they choosing other mechanisms to voice their concerns or their disagreements, which ends up in violence. So as I read the mission statement, it says to promote and enhance amateur boxing and wrestling competitions throughout the city of Cleveland with emphasis on growth, character building, and sportsmanship. If we don't have this field, where is it taking place at? If we're not putting the dollars into our rec centers and our neighborhoods to be able to get these boxing and get some of these young people into something that is positive, then them handling their conflicts the best of their own ability, that means we're doing a disservice. So I would be cautious if we just get rid of the Boxing and Wrestling Commission. I will be open if we want to have deeper dialogue and concept to understand why boxing is not a top priority in our city, to figure out what is going on. In addition, some of the things I would definitely send over to the administration is to get some clarification on how many events have they hosted the last couple of years. What is actually the revenue versus cost? What are we doing? What is the compliance oversight? What is the administrative cost? And obviously the economic impact with having a boxing commissioner versus what it doesn't. So I definitely think, to take your suggestion, Council President, if we have a deeper dive conversation on the boxing commission, I will be welcoming and open to that, because I know the importance of boxing. Before I leave and yield my rest of my time, Dwayne Browder was the chin king of making sure we had boxing. He'd be turned over his grave if we do not make boxing a top priority in our city, and we need that in our rec centers, especially in areas where young people don't have those men and those mentors and those boxing trainers to hone in some of that energy from being a negativity and turn it into positive inside the ring as opposed to in the streets.
Absolutely. And I would look forward, if we could, with Recreation and Councilman Bishop. I think that's something that we could look at through operational and how we actually beef up boxing and utilize this commission. So, Councilman Charles Slife.
I'll just very briefly say thank you, Council President. The data on boxing in Cleveland actually looked pretty good. There was a 200% increase in the rec center's participants in boxing from 2024 to 2025. There's a couple more instructors. I don't think questioning the existence of the Boxing Commission is not, to me, questioning the worthiness of boxing as a sport or our ability to provide it. The Boxing Commission exists to regulate, to staff events, and my understanding is that all of those functions can be done through the state of Ohio. So I see this as a duplication of something that is already happening. I think the opportunity right now, there are 0 individuals who would be affected by us doing some sort of counter ordinance, and I think it would be maybe more productive for us to take $32,000 and put it back to rec directly so that they can use that for programming, so that they can get more kids involved in boxing, rather than having to staff a function that can be done by the state. I would also note, and we did this in the past for a division of special events, just because something's in the budget doesn't mean it has to be budgeted. So I think it would take a counter ordinance to fully remove this from the budget book, but I would suggest that there's an opportunity to take these dollars and place them in a more impactful spot, including in ways that can help to grow the number of people participating in boxing at our rec centers. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And I think the director is willing to look at that and how we can move those dollars, and then we can possibly do what I think everybody's saying, do a deep dive and look at our entire strategy, because I could tell you even at Fairfax, which has one of the best boxing programs, that, you know, we might need to actually, we might be, to my colleague Starr's point, we might be undershooting ourselves as far as how we're promoting boxing. So I just want to make sure that we just don't abandon something just prematurely, but I do agree that it needs to be in sync to what you're saying, Councilman Slife, with rec, no matter what. So I think we all agree that we might want to shift those dollars. We just want to, I think, do a more strategic plan around it before we make a decision. Councilman Mike Polinsky.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues, and to the administration and to Councilman Starr. I think the bigger question we need to figure out, to my knowledge, at one time, the city was supportive of the Golden Gloves program. My uncle and my father were both Golden Glove champions, both of them. And my uncle was a double Golden Gloves and went on for AAU national champion. I think it was at featherweight, welterweight, one of those small weight classifications. But both grew up in the city on the east side, and we're in that program. So I think what we need to do is figure out what happened over a period of time, why the city has not promoted that type of program. And so again, that's what I would say. I think we need to get to the bottom of why it's no longer there. Councilman Starr raises some very valid points. If this is an opportunity where we can somehow capture some young men from going in a different direction, then we need to do it. Because I don't have to tell any of us what we're dealing with in the streets today in the city of Cleveland. Every young person we can capture in a program initiative, we need to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're going to kick this to Councilman Bishop and try to have a deeper dive strategically around it. We'll leave it as a placeholder, but we do want to talk about how we can potentially, I think there's a appetite to move those dollars to coordinate them with rec so that we can really try to beef up boxing in the city. Okay? All right, thank you. Oh, Councilman Starr.
And then also to that point, it does say wrestling. You know, wrestling is a big sport, so while they say it may be sanctioned by the state or whatever, how many times has the state actually worked to help the city of Cleveland? So if we're going to rely on people who continues to undermine the city of Cleveland to operate in our city, I think that would be working backwards than us figuring out how do we actually work with this little bit of dollars. This is $30-some thousand we're talking about. I mean, it don't take that much strategy or planning. It's either we're going to add a commission, but also understand that during the commission rules, you got to have somebody who's certified within those boxing and certified within the wrestling department to be able to actually host those worldwide championships. So when I was talking about how many boxing championship or matches we hosted, we haven't hosted that many this year. I know last year in Ward 5, we hosted one with Doug Patterson. And Doug Patterson is a sanctioned, certified boxing commissioner who can actually bring Golden Gloves and bring different tournaments in there. And I believe if we go away from there, we will not have someone in that position. Or if we align it to be able to work under municipal services and parks and recreation, there'll be some things we can do. But let's not just trip or about the little bit amount of money that we do. We get what we put in there. If we put little dollars in there, we only get a little bit of return on our investment. So I look forward to those discussions with Chairman Bishop as well as you, Council President. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Through the chair to the councilman, I just want to address a few things. So we do have some major events in both boxing and wrestling, of which I'm a personal fan of both. I want to point out Abdullah Mason, world lightweight champion of the world that City Council honored, is from Cleveland. So that's a big deal. Also, you know, I know the WWE has had wrestling events, and Cleveland, you know, plug to the people at home, is going to be hosting the NCAA Wrestling Championships, so the amateur wrestling. So, you know, that's despite the lack of funding for the commission, Cleveland is still, you know, rich in boxing and wrestling events.
Thank you, and I think this is one of the most productive conversations around the Boxing Commission in the 8 years that I've been here, so let's figure it out. No, we ain't gonna do that. That's what we're not gonna do. All right, seeing no other questions, we'll move now to Department of Building and Housing, and I will turn the gavel over to the Majority Leader, Jasmine Santana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If we could read it into the record.
Page 265, Building and Housing Director's Office, Director Sally Martin O'Toole. Page 266, Salaries, 2025 unaudited, $2,149,343. 2026 budgeted, $2,257,730. Page 267, Total Expenditures, 2025 unaudited, $4,360,178. 2026 budgeted, $4,697,116. And page 268, Staffing, 2025 actual 27, 2026 budgeted 28, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Brooke. Director,
Madam Chair.
good afternoon. You could start. Do you have a presentation?
Good afternoon. I'd like to take you through a deck, and it looks kind of daunting and long, but it's going to probably answer a lot of the questions that are going to be pending, but I will speed through it. So staffing always comes to the forefront as something that is a huge concern. The actual count of our staffing as of now is 143 with the breakout as defined there. So our budgeted head count is 167, and the total number of current inspectors on staff, those who inspect properties, is 85. That question has come up quite a bit. So we've hired 19 people in the past year, and since the term started for Mayor Bibb in 2022, we've hired 58 people in the Department of Building and Housing. We've promoted a lot of staff. We've had 10 staff promotions this past year, and we've had about 18 staff promotions since 2022. And we have 24 vacant positions, with 2 of them being filled this week. So typically, with a lot of our vacant positions, they are inspector-type roles. One of the reasons, it's been historically quite difficult to break into this field, typically coming from the trades. Often tradespeople earn more, so we tend to get them at the end of their career, which also explains why there is a significant amount of attrition in building and housing at all times, because a lot of our staff tend to be a bit older. So I have added the org charts for the 3 divisions, and mostly this is so that you have it. I won't go through anything exhaustively. I just want you to have it in your on your tablets so you can refer to it. Core initiatives in 2025, Residents First was fully operationalized, including all the rental registration enhancements, the vacant property registration with exterior point of sale, parking garage certifications and civil tickets, as well as rolling out a brand new high grass and weed process. We also have been working with law on civil nuisance litigation, which we believe is necessary to expand going further. We have a lot of out-of-state investors. It's very difficult using traditional code enforcement to get them in line, so essentially threatening to take a property or forcing a sale of a property feels like a good avenue for some of the more troubled buildings. We've also launched systematic code enforcement, so inspectors are working proactively in neighborhoods, working with property owners to gain compliance. We started issuing warning tags and thank you tags. We were surprised and delighted to see that warning tags are resulting in results about 50% of the time. And this is, avoiding criminal code enforcement, but working with residents. And we believe that's leading to increased engagement and positive interactions. Construction permitting has been a massive project for the department. While 75% of our building permits are issued in the same week that they're applied for, it's always that small percentage of complicated projects that have led to a reputation of it being very hard and slow to do business with the city of Cleveland. And obviously this is one of Mayor Bibb's top priorities with the Cleveland era. And we have done a significant amount of work launching a brand new portal in December of 2025 and streamlining that process, which I'll get into more in detail further on. So we're very, very proud of how we've ramped up enforcement in the department. So with rental enforcement, we've used civil tickets to address the chronic failures to comply. So for instance, there were thousands of CMHA Housing Choice Voucher properties, so private-owned properties that were taking a CMHA Housing Choice Voucher that had never been on the rental registry. And so we've been doing bulk issuances of civil tickets. We've also created a task force to deal with large bulk owners of rental properties. So where someone owns more than 10 properties, we're doing deep dives on those to see about a streamlined approach to enforcing on them. Also, you've heard from law about civil litigation. We had three very high-profile projects that came to fruition in Shaker Square area. We have another one in Shaker Square. The law department did 2 of them, well, actually 3 of them on single-family homes in different areas of the city, and then we have filed a civil nuisance action against the 14 properties being foreclosed on by Fannie Mae in the Shaker Square area, which has led to them coming to the table to work with us more than they had. We also established last year the Problem Properties Task Force. So this is a multi-departmental biweekly roundtable that we created, and we used Councilwoman Moore as the guinea pig here to start this process, but it's expanded. It's being convened by law. It has the departments of building and housing, public works, public safety, so when a troubled property requires more intervention than just the Department of Building and Housing, we put it in this venue. And so we have a docket now of about 25 to 30 properties that we're working, and we tend to drive results relatively quickly. We're also, hopefully without a government shutdown, going to continue having our HUD troubled property meetings, and this is with our HUD field staff, project-based Section 8 buildings that many of you have in your wards that have created headaches. So we work collaboratively with HUD. We're inviting the council people who have troubled assets in their wards to attend these. We've had some setbacks just due to the government shutdown. So we're also very grateful for finance departments pushing of DocuSign. It's made a very big difference in building and housing in terms of reducing contract approval time by weeks for demolitions. We also have several grant-funded initiatives underway, including the $10 million ODOT grant for demolition, which we're on track for the full capture of funds. We've launched the City Detect grant-funded AI code enforcement tool, which has hit the road, which has been a really interesting way to track vacant properties and also to hopefully in the future start avoiding wasted trips for us. Center for Community Progress also gave us a grant to help launch a state-of-the-art training program for inspectors, which is underway. And some of you may notice with high grass and weeds, we have a different process for occupied properties now, and that is 1 citation for the entire growing season, and then there's a cadence with which these are given to Public Works for grass cutting. And also we are very much involved with the Innovative Housing Pilot, which of course we want to bring modular housing to the city, but also we want to make it faster and easier to build new affordable units, and construction permitting obviously has a very high role to play in that. Also very, very happy to have joined with Cuyahoga County, and Department of Building and Housing worked hand in glove with them to do delinquent tax outreach to residents in Cleveland that had a tax delinquency. And I believe the mayor touched on this in his remarks, but we mailed out 12,677 letters to delinquent taxpayers. The delinquency amount was reduced by $7.5 million as a result of our outreach. We had 6 outreach events held at rec centers. So it's 3,552 people paid in full, and others, 66% of the people who attended took some positive action on their account to save their homes, which is a huge priority for all of us. So demolitions, as stated before, we raised 440 structures. We've increased our demo activity by about 11%. We have a map there showing where those occurred. We've also been doing innovative corridor pushes, and one of the ones that I really have appreciated greatly has been the 130th and Buckeye corridor push, where we've worked with public health, law enforcement to push some results. We had an issue with the Sunoco station and the Family Dollar over there, and we've been able to make some major strides, and we're staying on it, and I think that's the key. We have to stay on things and keep following up. So code enforcement metrics, I think what you'll see is a lot of Power BI dashboards. So in building and housing, we use Power BI to measure everything, including productivity of staff members. So we're very much very data-driven in building and housing. And so this past year, there was a 48% increase in code enforcement inspections. There was also a 42% increase in service requests, and we have a fantastic 311 system that we're thrilled is run by Kate Warren now, and we believe that is the right way to submit complaints to us because they're tracked, they're followed up on, we have metrics around them. We increased the amount of violations issued this past year by 32%. Rental registrations increased by 23%. And we had 4,818 lead-safe certifications issued. Even though this function has mostly been moved to public health now, we are still doing the enforcement behind it. That's a 104% increase, largely due to the big push in enforcement on rental properties that we did this past year. Double slide, sorry about that. Systematic code enforcement is what we mean by property maintenance investigations. These are ones that are not complaint driven, but they're driven by us. And so we did 3,231 of those inspections. We issued 9,059 tickets, 331 high grass citations, 518 exterior vacant building point of sale inspections. We registered 1,130 vacant buildings, 84 parking garages, and we issued 5,258 certificates approving rental occupancy, and that is on almost 30,000 rental properties that submitted every single piece of documentation we asked them for. And then we issued 9,224 certificates of disclosure. Commercial permits, we need to talk a little bit about that. We have seen a softening in the construction market. No surprise with tariffs and with an unsure environment with interest rates. So while we did about the same amount of permits we've done in prior years, the commercial job value has declined rather dramatically, and that is definitely a result of not doing as large of projects over the past year. Now, we do believe in the coming year things are going to tick up a bit, but we are very conservative in our projections here because we just don't know what our federal climate holds for the market. And so I'm going to get more into that as well. So if you look at the summary of what was budgeted and what came in, you see a pretty large shortage, and of course that is a result of that softening market. Some of our larger builders and some of our bigger commercial entities have pulled back on some of the larger projects that they were planning to do. And so you can see where this has landed us. So it's really on account of not doing as many gigantic projects, the ones that hit in 2024, and I have a list of some of those. So the largest projects in 2025 is the new police headquarters, the Metro Health main campus, the West Side Market renovation, the Shoreway Complex addition, and a Cleveland Clinic project. Bear in mind that if it is a city project, meaning the new police headquarters and the West Side Market renovation, we are not collecting permit fees for those. We are waiving them because we're not charging ourselves for those fees, and so that's going to result in a decreased amount of revenue. But compare that to 2024 when the Cleveland Clinic was doing many, many more large projects, and we had the large project at Case as well. So what's going on with the permit process? Well, if you haven't taken a look at it, you're going to want to. It's very different from what it looked like before. So we launched a new permit portal homepage. The biggest, I think the thing I'm most excited about is the digital plans room. And so when you submit drawings now to the City of Cleveland, you submit them digitally, and all of the different reviewing bodies, which can be several different departments, can review them at the same time, and then the comments are compiled and given back to the applicant. That's been a sea change for us and very helpful. The other thing that is great, and if you haven't tried it, you may wish to, is we've created with the Urban Analytics this wonderful little tool that is embedded in the website. If you would like to check on a permit, you don't have to log into the Acela system. You simply have to enter an address or a parcel number, and it'll pull up the records on that address, and it'll tell you what's going on with it if there's a permit. So if you're living next door to someone, you wonder if they got a permit to do what they were doing with their house, all you have to do is enter the address, and it will come right up for you. So essentially, the purpose of this is to show clear ownership of work. Where is something in the process? Where is it stuck? Who is it waiting on? Is it waiting on the customer or is it waiting on us? It helps us identify bottlenecks. It allows us to intervene so nothing gets stuck. It creates a paperless workflow, and then also we've added some flexible capacity levers, including using Safe Built as needed for backlogged building code review. And then we've also had wonderful folks from community development who have helped support us with our new customer kiosks, where, you know, in 505 you can come in and use one of our kiosks. And they've been tremendously helpful in helping some of the customers add capacity to our staff. Also, customer feedback has been essential for us, and we've actually created several mechanisms for customers to give us feedback. One is a little kiosk in 505 where, much like in the airport bathrooms, you can put a smiley face or a frowny face if you're not happy with us and enter some text. But the point here is that we are adjusting to this feedback in real time and immediately making corrections to the system where confusion is coming in. So that's been really helpful, and we continue to do that. We have online methods for feedback. We have the little kiosk in 505. So we're prioritizing changes. We're also adding some additional, we consider this an incredibly iterative process, and we're absolutely not done with it. It's going to be continuing to be enhanced over this year and in the coming years. We have launched an urban AI boot camp in almost every single division of building and housing. And so we did that with our intake process with construction permitting, and it's yielded some great results. We're adding more permit types in our new system. We're adding a search feature using GIS, implementing a customer-friendly open counter user face, and so many more enhancements to come, which I'll be glad to share with you. Goals for the year is putting customer experience first in everything we do. Continued refinement of the construction permitting process, expanding systematic code enforcement efforts, enhanced vacant building enforcement using City Detect, increasing the use of civil nuisance litigation to address problem properties, enhancing code enforcement training and onboarding to assure mission alignment, expanding our lead-safe 1 to 3 unit engagement with property owners who are struggling to comply, expanding the use of a problem properties roundtable and the HUD and troubled properties collaboration, partnering with other stakeholders and departments to create a better process for home repair grant access, and continuing to partner with the county on property tax outreach was an absolute home run, and we want to keep doing it. And that concludes my formal remarks, so absolutely happy to take questions.
Thank you, Director. I realize you did your whole presentation on code enforcement and current construction permitting. So can our policy team read the additional departments into the record? Division of Code Enforcement and Division of Construction Permitting.
Page 269, Division of Code Enforcement, Commissioner Tasir Hamdallah. Page 270, salaries, 2025 unaudited, $6,575,072. 2026 budgeted, $6,897,380. Total expenditures on page 271, 2025 unaudited, $9,672,241. Budgeted 2026, $10,185,283. Page 272, staffing, 2025 actual, 102, 2026 budgeted, 119. And for construction permitting, page 273, Division of Construction Permitting, Commissioner Naveed Hussain. Page 274, salaries, 2025 unaudited, $1,134,115. 2026 budgeted, $1,433,442. Total expenditures, 2025 unaudited, $1,579,464. 2026 budgeted, $2,069,565. And staffing on page 275, 2025 actual 15, 2026 budgeted 20. Madam Chair.
Thank you. So I'll start with my questions, and I'll open it up to my colleagues. Oh, Go ahead.
So
Finance
through the
Director.
chair to the committee, if I could just make one comment, because it
Yeah,
may
go ahead.
head off some questions. I want to make it a point, since we're doing all three sections at once, to point out that there were 3 headcount in building and housing admin that actually moved to public health. So you'll see salaries and benefits a bit lower. And then 1 that actually came from, I believe, permitting for the same reason. I believe the director can speak a little more to the actual functionality, but I believe these were related to the lead team.
Thank you. You actually answered my question. That was my first one. But Director, do you want to add anything?
Sure. Madam Chairwoman, we made a decision to move the report function, reviewing lead safe reports, to public health. I think that's where it should live. It just made better sense. It's a regulatory program. And so it moved there. We retained our 1 to 3 family lead unit, which actually goes out into the neighborhoods to help people understand how to gain lead compliance. And we do the enforcement on the back end for the whole program.
Got it. Director, I do. You know, one of my biggest issue is commercial corridors, right? A lot of vacancy. And so when I reach out to building and housing, normally you don't have the staff to kind of do a sweep, you know, through the whole corridor. Does this budget help with that enforcement on the retail corridor?
Madam Chairwoman, it does in terms of, we have a dedicated Main Street unit, and we're focused on that, and I think we did go out to Store and some other areas throughout the city, and we did some sweeps. So we have additional staff we're going to be onboarding, 1 today.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yay. And so, yeah, I think we'll be able to handle it.
Got it. And my next question, talking about like Family Dollar, dollar stores, right? Those are my biggest problems in our area. Whether it's the lighting, I know that we passed legislation to increase the lighting on parking lots. That's not taking place. Is that a separate inspector for Family Dollars or big corporate retail stores?
So, Madam Chairwoman, it would typically be Main Street. However, when we're doing targeted corridor enforcement, it may be our systematic team as well. So when we're focused heavily in the Buckeye area on the Family Dollar, that has been somebody in our systematic unit pushing on that. And so as long as someone is focused on it, and I do agree with you, we just see so many troubles with gas stations and also with these dollar stores. It just creates a lot of blight in the community.
What is the fine, the citation amount?
For a civil ticket?
Yes.
So if we're using, and so bear in mind, we can use civil tickets and we can use violation notices concurrently. So at the same time, we can use both. But a civil ticket is $200 and a $100 late fee. So if someone is, getting a civil ticket and a VN, we can take them to court and issue a civil ticket if we need to. So we have more
that's a
tools
pretty
in the
low cost.
arsenal.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
very
we
low
can
cost
issue
for
it
big-
every day, though.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Councilman Polenzek, and then I have Casey and Harsh.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairperson, my honorable colleagues, to the director and to the administration. I believe next to public safety, this is the most important department and sections within the city of Cleveland. It's the number 1 source of my complaints that I received. And again, when I was out Saturday morning on complaints, again, number 1 source into my office. So I have a couple questions, and then I want to make some general comments. On page 266, under property rental, under contractual services, explain to us what that is.
Yeah, so through the chair to the councilman, so the numbers may look a little skewed because we didn't have anything budgeted last year, and then we had something charged. This is actually the Erie View rent that was originally paid out of professional services. So if you look at the professional services line item, that's actually been dropped this year, and we've added this line item for property rental. We believe this adds a level of transparency, breaking out what we're actually paying in rent. So that's what also, the reason why you see professional services go from almost $1 million to about $700,000 is that difference in the Erie View rent.
So, through the chair to the director, who is in Erie View?
Through the chair to the councilman, it's all of the code enforcement staff,
Okay, so there's 2 Erie Views. Which one?
75 and 65. We have the entire 4th floor.
Okay. So, in light of the fact How long are we in for those leases? Do we know?
Through the chair to the councilman, I think that's up in the air because I think there was some talk at some point of buying those buildings, and then we looked at extending them,
No.
like from a lease
Okay.
perspective. So I'm not sure if that's actually been extended at this
Okay.
point or not.
Okay. We got closed school buildings all over the place. We got closed school buildings all over the place. The mayor runs the Board of Education, appoints the school board members, who appoints the CEO. We got to start thinking wiser and smarter as to where we're putting our employees from a standpoint of rental. So I'm going to throw that out now. We need to rethink where we have where we're in lease arrangements all over the city. So then, as it pertains to other contractual, that dropped. That went from 172,000 to 30,000. What is that? Right on page 266.
Yeah, so through the chair to the councilman, so as you can see, they only spent, $17,000 last year.
Yeah.
We're projecting specifically all they're going to need in other contractual is shredded services and air gas, which is safety vests. So that's what makes up that $30,000.
So what was the 172 for then?
Through the chair to the councilman, that's what was budgeted last year, but not spent. Obviously, we over budgeted because they only spent $17,000.
You ain't kidding, you did. Okay, substantially over budgeted. Okay, on page 267, under capital outlay, building betterments. What is that? The $150,000.
Through the chair to the councilman, that was proposed changes to room 510 to add more desk space. We haven't done it yet, but it's planned.
Yeah, and through the chair to the councilman, my understanding is that's been moved to the capital plan because it's more of a capital project.
But for what space again? For where?
Room 510, the director's office on the 5th floor of City Hall.
Okay, so that's up in the air.
Yes.
Okay. Then going down to revenues. We have charges for service. Then we have license and permits. Explain those categories.
So through the chair to the councilman, I'll hit the license and permits first. So you see, I think the director addressed this in her presentation. But you see the big number in 2024, and then the
Right.
we brought in 18 million of a budgeted 29. So this goes back to us budgeting as if I know Cleveland Clinic had a few really big projects.
Okay, I understand, but then that's what I'm not confused. Then what's the charges for service?
Okay. Through the chair to the councilman, that's demolition processing fees and related items.
So that would have been part of licenses and permits.
Through the chair to the councilman, that's considered a charge for service.
A what service?
A charge for service.
Well, I would think licenses and permits are as well, but regardless. Okay, so I'm going to stick to the office of the director's office. So then on page 268, it was budgeted 2025 for 31, actual is 27. Now there's a proposal for 28. So what I'm trying to understand here, in relationship to building, housing code enforcement, division of permitting, why do we need that many people in administration versus our needs in building and housing code enforcement and in permits?
Through the chair to the councilman, that's everyone that does rental registration in the city. That's everyone that has fiscal processes for the Department of Building and Housing. So a lot of things live there. So several people, of course, as we stated before, from the lead team were shifted over to public health.
Because my priorities, the priorities of my citizens are code enforcement, going after these absentee landlords, going after the derelict properties. And my concern is I keep hearing that this is a priority of the mayor, but I do not see it in the street. I would urge him to get in his car and drive Euclid Avenue. The area that I just picked up with the redistricting, it looks like an extension of East Cleveland. It's appalling, the condition of Euclid Avenue. Look at St. Clair. Councilman Conwell and I have been talking about that, the areas that we picked up on St. Clair Avenue. Again, look at the condition of the roadway. I mean, just the appearance of the street. You know, I don't know if people have blinders on, but I mean, Stevie Wonder could see what the hell's going on out there on Euclid Avenue. And so my concern is this. I'm trying to stabilize, and my new colleague in Ward 9, we're trying to stabilize the St. Clair corridor. We're trying to I'm trying to stabilize Euclid Avenue, which is like, my God, I got my work cut out for me. I'm sitting in my truck the other day saying to myself, did I really win or did I lose? When I look at what I inherited with the redistricting. Abandoned buildings, derelict buildings, people doing work with no permits. So I'm trying to understand where our focus is going to be going forward, because I see the condition of the east, not just talking about my neighborhood, but I look at the condition of the east side of the city. It is rough. It is rough. And I'm trying to understand within your budget, within the focus and with what I keep hearing about, this is a priority of the mayor. How are we going to address these concerns? But before I ask for your response, have you, Director Martin, have you had the opportunity to meet with the new housing court judge?
Yes.
You have, okay. I've sat down with her, and I've asked the council president to bring her into a caucus to talk. Have we had any discussions with the county, Mr. Chairman, to Sally, to Director Martin, or to whoever, as with regard to all these abandoned structures in the city that are tax delinquent and no foreclosure action pending? Have we had any dialogue with them?
Through the chair to the councilman, I have dialogue with them every month as I lead the VAPAC Delinquent Tax Working Group. I've chaired for 10 years. The county can foreclose on approximately 2,000 units a year. The county has over 35,000 tax delinquent units. This is why I think it's imperative that the tax lien sale that's being proposed moves forward.
Okay.
And it's been structured so that it's focused more on LLC ownership and not on individuals, and certainly not on anything homesteaded. They've put in guardrails for that, so I think that's an absolutely essential tool, and I think there's been a little pushback to moving that tool forward. So.
Okay, because virtually, Mr. Chairman, to the administration, virtually every derelict property that I look at is tax delinquent. It's either tax delinquent, and if it's abandoned, for sure it's tax delinquent, and yet a lot of these structures, has been stated by VAPAC and others, and I don't know if you are aware, maybe you are, we all receive, many of us receive this in the mail, this, what do you want to call it, whistleblower thing in the mail. Did you all see that whistleblower thing about building and housing? We all got? Okay. I mean, raised some serious concerns. This is critical to stabilize our neighborhoods, building and housing. I can't say enough. And again, with me, the proof is in the pudding. I cannot continue to look at derelict properties that just sit there and never are in the courtroom. That's a discussion I had with the new housing court judge. And she said to me, Councilman, I can't deal with them if they're not in my courtroom, which is correct. So we got to figure out how they're going to ramp up inspections. We're going to start holding some of these inspectors and some of these chiefs responsible, because I keep saying to myself, what, don't they see what I see when I'm in my neighborhood looking at this stuff? This crap that's just sitting all over and nobody's doing anything with? So I'm in 2026, man, I'm telling you, I'm ready to rip. Let me tell you, I'm going to clean up Euclid Avenue. I'm going to clean up Euclid Avenue come hell or high water. And I don't care who I got to go through, who I got to get over, and who I got to go around. And that includes the gentleman who sits in the office of mayor. Because I am not going to look at this junk. When I border South Euclid with the new ward that enforces the building code, when I border Cleveland Heights that enforces their building code, and when I border Euclid, which enforces their building code, don't get me started about East Cleveland, because that's what I got on Euclid Avenue. But thank God they got a new mayor who I think is really trying to get it together over there, and I will do everything I can to help her because we border now. But the city has got to take an aggressive role. This stuff has got to get cited. It's got to get put into the housing court, and we need strategic and surgical demolition on the east side. There's been a lot of stuff that came down, Mr. Chairman, on the east side that didn't need to come down, but it sat there vacant and tax delinquent. So, of course, then there was no other choice except to tear it down. We got to do a better job of focusing on what our priorities are. I'm here to do whatever I have to do. I'm here to work with whoever, but I got to say this to the finance director, I got to say this to Director Martin. What I see on the northeast side is not acceptable to me. It's not acceptable to me. I will not live like this. I will not let my constituents live like this. The Euclid Avenue corridor is an embarrassment. It should be an embarrassment to the gentleman who occupies the mayor's office. St. Clair should be an embarrassment. And I'm going to do what I can to work with Councilman Conwell to address the concerns and the areas, new areas that we've picked up. But again, I want to make it clear, this is unacceptable, what we're dealing with. We got to figure out in 2026 how to get the building and housing department working right. And so I'm going to jump right in on the other page on staffing for building inspectors. You're telling me that the number that we presently have, where are we? On page 1 and 272, 271 and 272, you, on technicians, you went from residential building inspector, you budgeted 30, you wound up with 19, and now only back to 22.
I think you have to look at the full number on the second final page, is 119.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, on page 272 shows the full amount of head count for the division. And again, this goes back to the drop in in staff from 120 to 119 is related to the lead that was moved to public health.
But you're on your technicians, you're going down to 22 on the residential building inspector.
Through the chair to the councilman, we've also done some switching to add property maintenance inspectors that don't require the certifications. It's allowed us to onboard a larger number of people.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, to the directors, you know what was said at this table last year?
Yes.
And the year before, when I asked, do we have enough people? And the director sat at that seat and bold-faced lied, but had the honesty to tell us after the fact that he was told to lie. Now, we have never, in my time, recently, have taken subpoena or asked people to take an oath of office, to take a swear an oath at the table. I'm going to ask you, both of you, do you have enough people to enforce the building code in the city of Cleveland?
Through the chair to the councilman, I first want to clear up, I never lied, and
I
I
didn't
was
say you
never
did.
told to lie. So I want to make sure that that's perfectly
Okay.
clear.
Okay.
Through the chair to the councilman, I heard him say it.
Yep.
With all respect to my former colleague. Is there ever going to be enough people to do what we want to do in the city of Cleveland? Aren't we in a scarce resource environment, and we're
Okay.
having to do the best we can and try to make strategic decisions and be as strategic and laser focused as possible? One of the reasons for adding city detect. I've never lied to you, and I never will.
You have enough people.
Of course not.
Okay. If, Mr. Chairman, if you needed more people, what category would you need them in?
We would always need additional inspectors,
Building or housing?
mostly for code enforcement.
Okay?
However, they're hard to hire. So one of the reasons that we added property maintenance inspectors was you
Okay.
saw from year over year
Yes.
over year, I always carried over vacancies. And this is because
Okay.
the state made it very hard to get these certifications. We were insisting on having certifications for all of the inspection staff, and that was great, except it led to us struggling mightily.
Okay.
So there will never be enough staff,
Okay.
right? We would love to have lavish staff.
Yes.
But there's a resource environment that we have to work within.
Okay.
And I think we just have to be as creative
Okay.
and laser focused as we
My
can.
time is up, but you've stated you don't have enough people. And this is a revenue, I want to say to this is a revenue producing department. When I came in the door, George Forbes, and I said this the other day, George Forbes said to me, and to a group of us, never reduce nor cut a revenue producing department or division. If anything, try to enhance the staff or whatever you need to be so we can continue revenue. This is something we're going to have to talk about in reconciliation, because I'm telling you, 2026, something's got to give here. Or there will not be an east side of the city. That's how bad it is. The lack of visibility, what we see in our neighborhoods, the lack of code enforcement, the abandoned buildings, da-da-da-da. We got to do something different. I'm leaving it there. My time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, if I could just respond to that real quick. We are doing things to shore up building and housing. I know I've been working with the director on fees to see how we can better streamline those. We feel like the current system is unfair. People that come in person versus pay online, so we're looking at that. We've also, again, through union negotiations and that sort of thing, raised the starting pay and tenured pay to try to get quality employees in here, because we understand how important this is and that it is a revenue generating department, and I totally agree with you. We need to support them. The challenge in the past has been, just like with public safety and police, has been filling vacancies. And we're here to support the director, and if she's able to fill those vacancies, we're more than happy to look at headcount and see how we can best support her as a finance department.
Thank you. Councilman Casey.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And Madam Chairwoman, to the director, just to clarify, we want to make sure that when the council was told and the director was dishonest with this, that it was not you, it was the previous one. So I just want to clear the record straight for that. It was a prior director. That being said, Mr. Chairman, to the director, I know you just touched on staff levels, and you indicated that, no, we don't have enough employees, but is budgeting for only 4 plumbers for the whole city appropriate?
Through the chair to the councilman, I think we're okay on the plumbing division as long as we can
Okay.
staff it fully.
Right.
I have a little bit more of a struggle with electricians right now, and if you know electrician friends that might want to work for the city of Cleveland, please have them give me a call.
Okay. And then, Madam Chairwoman, to the director, is it fair to say that with the revamp of the Building and Housing Department and everything that you have asked for since you've been the director, that this council has been appeasing to you and have given you everything that you have asked for?
Through the chair to the councilman, I've no qualms about how well supported I've been by this body, and I am very grateful for that support and
Okay.
the recognition of the importance of the work we do.
Okay, and then, Madam Chairwoman, to the director, then what I want to ask then is that this council, since I've been in council and since you've been here, I know that we've at least passed one piece of legislation that the council has asked the Building and Housing Department to enforce a little strictly, and that's 337.19 that we passed in 2022. And that's regarding recreational vehicles and boats and driveways and stuff like that, which is a major problem in some areas of the city. So, Madam Chairwoman, to the director, I'm sure you do not have the stats in front of you today, but if you could provide this council with the number of citations that have been issued under 337.19 we'd appreciate that. All right, thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Councilman Harsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the Chair, to the Housing Director, good morning. Welcome, City Council. I have 4 basic areas that I want to ask you about this morning. The first one is, well, it's sort of an observation with a follow-up question. So in 2025, the City Council allocated about $17.5 million to all 3 departments. I'm just sort of combining them. But our expected revenue was going to be $28 million, so it looked like there was a $10 million gap. The revenue actually became $18.5 million, so there was only about a $1 million gap between the revenue from the department and the expenditures of the 3 departments: admin, code enforcement, and permitting. Does that sound about right? Through the chair to the director, I'm reading this.
Through the chair to the councilman, I haven't done the math without actually going through and doing the math.
Okay,
Yeah, I can't.
so in 2025, we allocated about $5 million for the director's office, $10.5 million for code enforcement, and $2 million for permitting, which makes about $17.5, and we brought in $18.5. In 2026, this year, we're allocating about $4.7 for admin, $10.1 for code enforcement, and $2.1 for permitting, so about $16.9, which is a little less than $500,000 less in total budgetary requests for the 3 departments combined. I think I'm in the ballpark, right? Through the chair, the director, chief.
Through the chair to the councilman, probably you're in the ballpark.
Okay.
But again, this isn't an enterprise fund.
I know. I'm just asking. Because the point I'm getting at is that we were projecting really large revenue from this department at 28 million, and we got 18, and now we've adjusted revenue expectations down to 17.8 million for 2026, far more consistent to the actual expenditure for the 3 departments. CFO, I see you're shaking your head.
Well,
here.
through the chair to the councilman, just want to reemphasize the reason you're seeing that drop this year is because we had those big projects in 2024, and then that we budgeted for that in 2025 as if that was going to continue, but the Cleveland Clinic projects had already paid their fees.
Right.
So we didn't see a continuation. Plus, there's been challenges in terms of tariffs.
Sure.
Which have been challenges to new construction projects.
And so I think there's very logical reasons why the revenue didn't come in. The director pointed out very specifically in her display or in her presentation, and it makes total sense. What I'm getting at here, Madam Chair, is that we could probably do a more accurate job of projecting building and housing revenue if we worked more closely with the Planning Commission and the people who actually see the jobs coming down the pipeline, because they're the ones that they're thinking about next year's projects now. They're thinking about 2028 projects now. And we could get a little bit more specific, because I'm really, in retrospect, glad we didn't allocate the other $10 million to the department as some people were advocating outside of City Hall. That would have been a disaster in retrospect had we done that. So I'm really glad that we showed a little bit more prudence and didn't do that. And this year it looks like we're allocating just a little bit less than expected revenue. So we're kind of bringing it more in line. And that's a good thing, I think, financially for the city. I just wanted to say that out loud, because I think there's a lot of people that believe that we should continuously pump more and more money into building and housing, and I understand why. But if we have continual problems in hiring and our revenue projections are not going to be entirely accurate, then we need to be conservative with our allocation of resources. So I wanted to point that out. I think it's a good thing. I'm saying a job well done. The second thing, the violations, which are reported on page 269, violations are up. Notices are up. This is good. This is what people want. My question through the chair to the director is, what is our compliance rate with the violations without having to go to housing court? In other words, what percentage of people comply with a violation simply by getting the violation and say, I'd rather fix that than fight it?
Through the chair to the councilman, it depends. It depends widely, right? Do they have the money to fix it? Are they able to do it?
But I mean, as a percentage of violations issued, a percentage of comply.
So I would say what we're tracking really closely is when we're going out for systematic enforcement, and we know that about half of those people comply. Civil tickets have also ramped up compliance, so people who had not bothered to register rental properties are coming down to register 20 of them, and So we've seen that without having to go and resort to court action.
Right.
We're very excited to work with the new Judge Wiltshire. We're super thrilled to take more cases to her. She's certainly got a great attitude about how to handle our docket.
So let me refine my question. Aside from the civil tickets, which you can't really track compliance on because you can just go out and issue another ticket, when it comes to an open violation that is a criminal, what percentage of criminal violations are settled through compliance without having to go to court?
Through the chair to the councilman, without trying to sound like I'm not trying to answer a question, I don't have it specifically, but I will say this, that our law department, which is staffed up, and we have some great prosecutors, they're doing a lot of diversion work as well before they take something to court, and they've resolved a large number, and I'm sure Dave Roberts talked about that.
Yeah, through the chair, I just want to make sure that we are able to track this data, because as we talk about trying to get properties into compliance in the city, there's a bunch of different stops between an inspector visiting and the housing court judge where you can achieve compliance. And it's important for us to know whether or not, we get some compliance off sending the violation out. You tell people that they're in violation. Some people will just fix it because they don't want the troubles. Cool. Some people will have to go to legal, and legal will then sort of pressure and they'll comply then. Some people have to go to court where they'll comply quickly. Some people go to court where they'll fight it and end up complying the hard way. And I just want to make sure that we're tracking this along the way so that we can see how to run the most effective code enforcement in the city. My next question, this is going to be a code enforcement, we're going to drill down on the numbers, right? Code enforcement personnel, there were the residential building inspector interim, which is going up quite a bit in terms of allocated spots, and then that's on page 271, and then on page 272 are the property maintenance inspectors. So for a minute, we thought that the PMIs were going to be our exterior sort of boots on the ground first line, and it seems like those numbers have dwindled over the years, and now we're putting more into the residential building inspectors. So through the chair to the director, could you explain the difference between what a residential building inspector interim does versus a property maintenance inspector?
Through the chair to the councilman, yes, a residential building inspector interim is someone who is taken the test for a residential building inspector and passed, but hasn't gotten fully certified yet. What I want to point out about all these classifications is we can change them at will. So if we're not having any luck filling an RBI, we can advertise for a PMI and switch it. So they're all in the same union classification, and it's easy to move them around. And so we have hired a lot of PMIs. Some of them have already gotten promoted and moved up and tested and gotten their RBI, which is what we wanted. We wanted to bring them in and then help develop them. And so that number can be extremely fluid.
So through the chair, how close are we to having one exterior residential inspector per ward? So 15 total.
Through the chair to the councilman, Taysir Hamdallah, as you know, is the new commissioner of code enforcement, and I know that is his goal, to get people specifically devoted to wards, because we know that having that familiarity is really, really helpful. So I think we're going to get there probably in the coming year. He's looking at how he can juggle some things. We also had a wonderful recruitment event last week, and we got a number of great leads off of that. We hired several people from that last year.
How many? So I'm sorry, I only have a minute and a half left. I just got to keep my time. All right, I try to keep time. We have 11 residential building inspectors interim on staff right now, and we have 4 property management inspectors on staff right now. That's 15. Are they dedicated to 15 separate wards? Through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilman, no.
Okay, we'll come back to work on that later. Last question, through the chair. The mayor ran the Home for Every Neighbor program, where they grabbed a bunch of folks who were sleeping in tents downtown and moved them into the neighborhood. We immediately started getting calls because a lot of them did not become great neighbors. They became very problematic neighbors. And as we know, that there's been a problem with paying the rents on a lot of those units. So my question through the chair is, did anybody at the administration ask you to run a check against code violations, rental registry, lead safe certification for any of the units that the city was using taxpayer dollars to put formerly homeless people into?
Through the chair to the council person, no.
Okay.
However, I just had a great conversation with health on this recently, because obviously it's a real battle, right, to find landlords willing to take some of the people and also making sure that they're compliant with the city. So I believe while they didn't come to me, our data is all very open, and certainly I think they probably did some cross checks on that one.
Okay. We'll have a lot of more work to do on that. Council Chair Lady, that's the end of my time.
Thank you, Councilman Harsh. Councilman Starr, and then I have Councilman Slight. Starr.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. One of my key points is for you, as the chair, is can we possibly host a hearing involving building and housing department, law department, as well as HUD, to be able to get all together to see, and also the Cleveland Housing Court to come and have a hearing discussion regarding how they working together to solve a lot of these issues.
Noted.
One of the things I see, Madam Chair, is when we start discussing just code enforcement violations, it's bouncing off of each department, and next thing you know, we don't get nothing when it comes to issues that we're dealing with in our public housing as well as in just the housing stock. So I would love for you to call a hearing and bring all those different divisions, those departments to the table, because one of the things that is problematic for the neighborhood that I represent is a lot of public housing. And everyone keeps saying what we can't do. Or they saying, well, we can't, if we have no jurisdiction on public housing, we need HUD. But then as you know, we have HUD representation downtown in the city of Cleveland. We need to make sure they are doing everything that we ask. But then also it goes more back into some of the questions that my colleagues have mentioned is, do we really have enough inspectors? And one of the things that Dean Polensik was able to ask through the chair to Building Housing Director, she said she need more. Then my question is, when I look at these numbers about inspectors, and I see these numbers of actual last year, this year, it's like we have a lot of code inspections and violations, and it says that number of 64,398 inspections. That's how many inspections we've done in 1 year through the chair to the Building Housing Director.
Through the chair to the councilman, yes.
So the Building and Housing, in 1 year, they did 64,398 inspections. And through the chair, how many inspectors do we currently have again?
Through the chair to the councilman, 85.
So 85 inspectors in 1 year cycle were able to conduct 64,398 inspections. Wow, and it says it's a change and a plus from the previous years. Like, through the chair, how were they able to increase those inspections? How were they able to do more this past year than they've done in any year through the chair?
Through the chair to the councilman, one of the things that we did was to separate out the permit inspection functions from the code enforcement inspection, which was a game changer because it allowed us to either have staff solely focus on code enforcement or solely focus on permit inspections. So we got better at both of them.
Okay.
Because there wasn't a distraction where I've got to do this permit, and then if I get to the code enforcement, I get to it. Now code enforcement's its own priority, which it needed to be all along.
So when we have a lot of these different inspections being separated to make sure they have an area of focus instead of just one doing all, it allowed us to be able to do more inspections through the chair to the director, correct?
Through the chair, correct. I believe so. And I also believe in Taysir Hamdalla's leadership, and he's very aggressive, and he shares everyone's frustration with how things are in the neighborhoods and how much we want to improve them. And he's driving the team, and he's doing a great job at it.
Thank you. And one of those different questions that I would definitely want to flow into is just the understanding of permit. I know we have this new online system that poses a track, but one of the things that I see and I hear from a lot of different people who are asking for a permit is it gets bottlenecked. It seems as if it goes through each department, whether it's going through planning, whether it's going through zoning, fire, engineer, utilities, all these different departments. Everyone seems as if they have 30 days to respond. So even if we go online, how can we ensure that people can actually get a permit within a reasonable time frame or a timeline, as opposed to every possible division being able to say, well, I have up to max 30 days to respond through the chair. How do we tighten up on that or change that process through the Madam Chair?
Through the chair to the councilman, you're right. There's so much frustration. So 75% of all of our permits are issued in a week or less. So this is what we need to remember. But for that 25%, what a frustration, right? If you have to go through 12, 14 different departments to get your project approved, it can be very frustrating. So the purpose of what we did with the overhaul was to make it transparent as to where something is in the process. So part of that exercise is also creating SLAs for how long something should sit in a particular area. And obviously there's things that get thrown in the mix, like you have to go to a board and commission or you have to get a variance, and that takes time. Also, what we noticed when we overhauled the process was that sometimes a lot of things were sticking with the applicant, so they were supposed to revise drawings and send them back, but they didn't. And so what the new system does is it communicates better, right? If we're waiting on the customer, we're letting them know what we're waiting on. They can go in the portal, they can see what we're waiting on. We don't think we're done with this yet. This is going to take a long time because I think the other thing that has to take place is, you know, does it need to be this complicated, right? There's a lot of hands in this pot. Can we have fewer of them? And I think that's where the real work is starting now. Like, we've made it more transparent, we've made it easier to navigate, but now we have to see, is there an actual way to simplify some of these difficult things? And a lot of these projects are highly complicated and they do take time, but we want to make it as efficient as we can, and that's what we're focused on.
Thank you, and I think that's a top priority, to just get a better understanding, and also just to be able to have those actual guidelines posted. So if a person is looking to pull a permit, do we have anything on this portal or on the document to show what is the actual steps needed for just a residential permit, commercial permit, just so they could know what's the actual flow, as opposed to just waiting to get an alert or something and say, oh, it's time for that. Do we have something like that in your department or through one of your divisions that could show online or actual list to say these are the steps to get X, Y, Z, or to get to your end goal for the permit through the Madam Chair?
Yes, through the chairwoman to the councilman. Yes, if you go to the construction permitting website, you're going to see a lot of information and a lot of tutorial videos and a lot of screenshots about how to navigate that, but I think it's fairly intuitive. So if you do explore the permit portal and if you want us to take you through a tutorial, we're absolutely thrilled to do that. We're just putting something up on TV 20 as well, but we're really trying to over communicate. We also beta tested it with a bunch of different developers, local in the community, to just make sure that we could get some of the bugs out before we launched.
All right, and thank you for that. And from that standpoint, I also will ask, just from one of the things that I've heard since Residents First has passed is a lot of residents are frustrated. And not the ones being frustrated as if they are so in compliant with the law. The residents that I'm speaking to is the mom and pop. Those seniors who are now being told that they have to go online to get registered. And if they miss the deadline, they are now being penalized. And I say this respectfully. I know certain colleagues that are not well equipped with technology. That's my colleagues. What are we doing to ensure that we're not penalizing our senior population who are property owners, in which some of them have reached out to me and said they've called down, they came down here, and they were told by some staff in the department that maybe you can get your grandchild to help you. And that right there is very frustrating. I haven't brought it to you, Director, because I'm still frustrated on how to be able to deal with that. But being as I am an elected official, it's my duty and job to ask a tough question. So how do we ensure that Residents First is doing what it's supposed to do, as opposed to penalizing those individuals that are hometown senior population who are just some property owners who got 3 or 4 properties? How are we making sure we have some due diligence or we're being respectful for them through the Madam Chair?
Through the chairwoman to the councilman, this is a legitimate concern. In fact, we really didn't realize how many elderly landlords we had until we launched Residents First, and many of them were coming to the 5th floor on walkers and canes and, you know, asking for assistance. one of the ways that we helped address this last year, and this, we're getting into our season right now, where people are coming in to re-register. It's due in March, and so it's our busy time upstairs. We have people from community development again helping. And last year they really went above and beyond, and they would go to people's houses even, and they, set up times that they could meet at rec centers, and just to try to help take them through it, because we know we're asking for a lot from our landlords. And for some of our bigger commercial landlords, it isn't that daunting, but for some of our local folk, and nobody wants to harm them, and I don't know who said that to them, because generally speaking, I would say our records room staff bends over backwards to help our elderly constituents, because, everyone wants to help them. And so getting that help from community development was really a godsend last year, and we anticipate their help again this year.
Yep, and through that standpoint, it's something is very important to deal with because it's a challenge. It's not easy. Building housing department, like you heard from the dean, is one of the most important divisions outside of public safety, the departments in the city of Cleveland, and just get some understanding of that. I know that I do have a request with the chairwoman to be able to possibly host a hearing so we can get down to the nitty gritty because those different things. And as I wrap up, Madam Chair, my number one part that I understand is when you talk about those criminals and those civils enforcement, I definitely would like to see, since we passed resident first, how many criminal cases have been filed under your department with the work that you've done. That is something that'll let me know if we just writing from, like the law director says, seatbelt tickets, but we're not expediting anything to get done. And I yield, Chair.
Councilman Starr, Councilman Slife, and then I have Councilwoman Hudson.
Thank you. To begin, through the chair to the director in finance, all of the revenues for building and housing are coded within the director's office, correct? So that's why we don't see revenues within the two divisions. Within those revenues is all of the, let me make sure I read it correctly. All of the licenses and permits, through the chair, that's exclusively out of the division of permitting. That has nothing to do with code enforcement, correct?
Through the chair to the councilman, though, we do have rental registration fees. We have vacant building fees. You pay if you need to do a certificate of disclosure. So all the revenues are booked in the director's office.
Okay, but I would suspect that an overwhelming majority of those are from the
Yes.
permits, not from a rental registration. I apologize for asking a silly question, but if I were to receive in this hypothetical situation, if I were to receive a ticket for a building code issue, and I pay the ticket, where does that revenue go? What I'm trying to understand is, again, this is not designed to be a revenue generator. However, I think that the opportunities for revenue generation that we see come down to enforcement. And I'm just trying to remind myself of, if we were to, in a world where we could quadruple that and just be hitting tickets left and right, would that come back into your budget, or would that go into the clerk of courts? Where would we see that hit the general fund?
Through the chair to the councilman, that would go into the general fund.
Okay. So there's sort of through the chair to finance, is there a way we could see within this book where revenues for code enforcement are?
Through the chair to the councilman, we're looking to see if there's an easy way that's broken out in the budget book. If not, we can follow up with those numbers.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, it would be nice to know, like, calendar year 25, what revenues we received from code enforcement. I think that would be an interesting data point for all of us. Without getting too deeply into it, I want to build off of Councilman Palensik's point where he noted the school closures. For a number of years, I've thought that whether it's, we have 20 rec centers, we have all of these schools, there's an opportunity for us to maybe use some of the real estate that we either own or is already under the control of the public sector and we could own in lieu of downtown rentals. And as it relates to building and housing, I used to drive a parts truck for my uncle, and I'd have to drive around all these cities and get permits for HVAC stuff. And going and getting a permit at Lakewood, not really an issue, but everyone griped about having to go to Cleveland because you have to drive downtown, you got to pay to park, the cage on the pickup truck is right at the clearance of the parking garage. Learned that the hard way. And I worry that it disincentivizes people to do things the right way and get a permit. It's too big of a topic to ask a specific question, but I would just say that I hope that we are looking at opportunities to reuse public facilities instead of paying downtown rentals. And I think that building and housing permitting is a prime example of something that we might be able to get more bang for our buck if that were not housed within City Hall. And then maybe we can talk about workers who it would be beneficial to be downtown in this building being able to come back across from Erie View. So I'll just leave that there. But it seems like we are at there's an opportunity coming forward. Very quickly, could you outline, and I think this is helpful for me, but also for the new members, kind of the relationship between building and housing law and the courts? Because I will say that it's often the easiest thing to get done is to get the citation issued through building and housing, but then there's a baton that gets passed forward. And I think it's helpful for us to know and be reminded where the workflow stops with building and housing, and so that we can make sure that we're asking the right questions to other aspects of city government.
Thanks.
The chair.
Through the chair to the councilman, it's a good question to flesh out. So if we issue a violation notice and no one complies with it, it's then referred to law, and then that matter is then referred to the court, or it's put into a diversion program within the Department of Law where they try to work something out before it goes to court. Conversely, of course, now we have civil tickets as a remedy, which is helpful, especially with some LLC actors who were never coming to court. So if you live in Utah or if you live overseas, very few of those defendants would actually show up in court, which has led to a lot of the frustration about nothing gets fixed, nothing looks better, but we've been kind of treading water with these things. And so our hope was that by adding civil tools in with criminal tools, it was going to help push compliance. So yes, once we issue the violation notice, it goes to law. Law then either tries to create a diversion with them and come to a remedy, or it goes to court, and they can appeal civil tickets. So there's a remedy there as well.
So thank you. So years ago when I worked in the previous administration, one of the things I was tasked with was tracking strategic demolitions. So we basically had, here's all these properties, and tracking the workflow of, like, we've identified it, a citation's been issued, it's in law, it's going forward with the process, or it's going forward with the paperwork, and then ultimately getting demolished. And I found one of the toughest aspects was understanding the workflow within law, and maybe going into this task, not appreciating how sometimes what we perceive as something getting stuck in law is just the length of the legal process to make sure that we're doing something in a way that we don't get sued. To that end, to the chair, perhaps it would be useful at some point to have law code enforcement come in to help us at a hearing understand their workflow and their backlog and their abilities to do more, do less, and maybe that could even be paired with the housing court judge, just to help us wrap our heads around this, because it's clearly an important thing to all of us. I will end just by saying and asking if you have an idea for how to address. For years, in my previous job, we always differentiated between vacant and distressed. Not every home that is vacant is a problem. Some people are just, moved to Florida, but they're taking care of it otherwise. And similarly, I think that there's a kind of an absentee owner versus an antagonistic absentee owner, or a disrespectful absentee owner. I find I'm dealing with a lot of cases where, say, grandma gets put into an assisted living because it's time, and her moron grandson moves in, and he's the problem. And he's the problem from a building code perspective, he's a problem from a public safety perspective, and he's bringing friends all around, and I worry that what the people on the street want is for this guy to go, is easier said than done, and our ability to maintain or to hold them up to the building code is really just going after grandma who's in assisted living, who is maybe not even of the ability to adhere to the code as we'd like. This sort of gets me to start thinking about like receivership again as an ultimate end road. But could you speak to what your thoughts are for how we could just get properties moving in a right direction, where it's, you know, whether it's probate or just people who we're dealing with occupants of homes who have every legal right to be there, but are maybe not your ideal neighbors?
Through the chair to the councilman, several things. You know, one, the Great Estates program through Cuyahoga County Fiscal has been really helpful. When we were out doing tax outreach, they were there as well, trying to help prevent tangle title issues when, you know, grandma passes and there's no real discernible heir. So we see that all the time. Heir properties, very, very hard. And you're right. So who would we hold to account? We'd hold grandma. And grandma's in assisted living. She may not even be able to make decisions anymore. So yeah, that brings us to mind civil remedies. Is it tax delinquent? Can we go after it with a tax foreclosure? Can we file a civil nuisance action? Do we, you know, civil tickets would add up. They would end up on the property tax duplicate, potentially pushing it over into delinquency. So there's a number of ways to potentially strategize on a property like that, and we have many of them in the city, and they're very, very frustrating for the residents, and I know that you all do get the calls. So it's multifaceted. The other thing with our problem properties roundtable that I've been really happy about is when law enforcement's involved, when we're involved, public health's involved, we have this wraparound approach. Typically, we can try to steer a direction as well because, you know, we're coming after them with law enforcement and building and housing. You know, maybe we're going to vacate it because they don't have utilities in that unit, and you know, they're arresting people at that house, you know, with public safety. And so by doing that, we've resolved an enormous amount of neighborhood headaches. And I just couldn't be happier with the way that we've all collaborated. And I think everyone's thrilled about it because we feel like we're actually, you know, solving long-term problems by working together.
I'll follow up with you on a couple of addresses, and I'll close there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair to the director, thank you for joining us today. I kind of just want to reiterate what you were saying about the Problem Properties Group. There have been several Ward 11 properties that have been on the agenda so far this year and before I even joined council, and it has been incredibly helpful to take that whole government approach to these properties. Just as an example, there's one apartment building on Madison Avenue that was unfortunately split into condominiums. And so there are, I think, maybe a dozen owners who all are listed in Turkey. And then there are, you know, there are squatters that, you know, keep getting into the building. It's vacant. There are dumping issues. So it's important to have, you know, all of the departments in the city working together. So thank you for hosting those meetings. I always look forward to them. I just want to also follow up on what my colleague Councilman Starr was saying about the online registration. I have also gotten calls from elderly property owners about the difficulty using the online system. And so that it is a real problem, unfortunately, with the technology and some of our seniors being unable. I had a gentleman who actually, you know, came to City Hall to register his vacant property and was sent away. Then he called my office, and we were ultimately able to connect him with somebody, I believe it was from community development, who helped him out. But it was unfortunate that he was sent away when he came here ready to write a check and register his property. So I have a question about the staffing levels through the chair regarding the staffing level in the Division of Code Enforcement. You mentioned that you have it's a difficulty filling these positions. Is it because of pay, or is it more about the skill and training involved in these positions?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, historically, it was a little of both. There was a lot of gatekeeping down at the state in terms of what the qualifications in past trade experience that you would have to have in order to get these certifications. And prior to adding the PMI classification, all we had was certified staff. So it made it really hard because you had to come in through the trade pipeline, and there just weren't that many people that were applying for the jobs. Adding PMIs was really helpful because it's an entry-level way to then start to train them and raise them up, and they then get promoted, which is great. So yeah, it's always been a bit of a hurdle. The state last year changed some of these requirements and made it easier. So we anticipate that this year it'll be easier for us to staff up, more so than it had been previously. But since I've been here, we've had 2 union contract renegotiations in both cases where we have raised pay for our inspectors that I think makes us very competitive with other cities. Now, the difference is because we work through bargaining units, we can't immediately counter if somebody is being offered more money at a different municipality that doesn't have a collective bargaining environment. We can't just raise the pay, right? We have to follow our collective bargaining guidelines, and so we do. But, you know, I think the climate is better. I expect to see it free up a little bit more now that the state has loosened some of these requirements.
Thank you. And through the chair, you also mentioned specifically having difficulty with the electrical inspector position. Is that also because of training or pay?
So through the chair to the councilwoman, electricians make a lot of money in the private sector, and they're in high demand. And this is also true of our elevator division, where, you know, in the private sector, they're definitely into the 6-figure incomes because they're risking their life in an elevator shaft. And so typically we get people to come and be inspectors toward the end of their career when they don't want to pull Romex and they don't want to get into an elevator shaft anymore. And so unfortunately, it also means that we maybe don't have them very long because we tend to get in-career folks. So as much as I think we are very competitive with what we pay these inspectors, we can't compete with the private sector when they're actually working in their trade, and I think that hampers us to some extent.
Thank you. I yield.
No, thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Davis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair to the director, hi, thank you for joining us here today. I have just one real straightforward line of inquiry. We've talked about the challenges in hiring, training, you know, experience levels, what folks are looking for out of a job, pay. One thing that's always on my mind is the tragedy of being a lawyer as I think about laws all the time. Our civil service laws. It really does strike me that our charter civil service provisions were written in 1934 with updates in the 60s and a couple more recent updates as well, but largely based in the 30s. I have to imagine this gets in the way of, you know, anything resembling a modern hiring process for your really essential roles. We have about 20 folks who you would like to hire who have not been hired, and anything that we can do as a council to support that work is, you know, needs to be discussed. So let me ask, is there, you know, room in your estimation for some updates to those laws?
Through the chair to the councilman, of course, I'm sure there are. And obviously the civil service process provides some important oversights to our hiring, and we really respect that. But obviously, and I do think we should shout out the Department of Human Resources for speeding things up, because we have seen it faster than it's ever been. But always room for improvement in anything we do.
That makes a lot of sense. Yes, not to detract from the really essential goals of protecting our public sector workers from political interference, and certainly to respect the great work our HR department has done. But surely there's something. I mean, I keep thinking and chewing on, just to think out loud, a commission, administration, council, workers, to think through the future of our civil service, to make sure that we're abiding by best practices and, you know, modern standards, not standards rooted in 1934. Really just to, I mean, honestly, if it helps hire 3 more people a year for your department, that would be a win. That's how I view it. So if this feels like something ripe for discussion, then I'd love to talk about it more. All right, I yield.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Gray, and then I have Councilwoman House Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Director. always a pleasure to spend time with you. As much as time you spend on Shaker Square, you are much appreciative of all the work that has been done in that area and all over, of course, citywide. But the intensity that you have put into that area has been very, rewarding. And we have accomplished a lot of goals in that area. And hopefully that we will continue to be successful at the end of the day. I know you have already been asked a lot of questions of my concern from all the councils, especially from the Councilwoman Santana. I walked out the room, but Council Chair, Madam Chair to the Director, she was asking the question about the commercial buildings on corridors. And since I have inherited certain areas that had extended to be Ward 3, I have been riding around those corridors in those areas with those commercial buildings. And what was the answer to Santana's question pertaining to those commercial buildings on the corridors? Because they have been sitting and they have been boarded up for a long time. And I know I asked the question to the law enforcer when he was here with the law department pertaining to can they still be cited for boarded up buildings and they just sitting there? Can they be cited for something for that? Madam Chair to the Director.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, yes, they can. And under our vacant building ordinance, they're required to register their building and post a bond. So this year, vacant building, we're getting very aggressive with our enforcement on it, including issuing an affidavit of fact against the title, so it can't just be transferred without complying with the vacant building ordinance. So yes, absolute goal of mine this year is to ramp up and get very aggressive about vacant building enforcement, because I know what you've gone through in your ward. We've seen all your efforts too, and they're very well recognized.
Thank you for
Flying to New York, yes.
Yes, thank you for that. And to add on that, I have even started that process already, but I don't want to be redundant, Madam Chair to the Director. I don't want to be redundant with the process if you already started a process when you and your team went through the citywide in 2023 to cite all the buildings all through the city of Cleveland. So due to that, do you have a listing of the commercial buildings that has already been cited per se? And I can get that list for Ward 3 so I can compare to what I have already gotten through the ward and just to know what else I need to do to send a citation through. I don't want to overwhelm 311, but I just need to know of a lesser way that I can get a citation to these commercial buildings. Madam Chair to the Director.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, yes, we can easily get you that information. That's something our staff can send to you, and we will. I would say we have a wonderful inspector who's working in your ward, too, who's been doing a lot of corridor sweeps. Okay. And I think I should have you speak with him as well, because you could potentially, tag team it and come up with an approach.
Yes.
To some of the ones that I think are causing you the biggest distress.
Yes.
The ones that are really running down some of your commercial areas.
Yes, thank you for that. And I'm going to, I don't want to, I got only some more minutes, but I want to bring this to your attention. I want to ask a question about your code enforcement. Madam Chair to the Director, do the code enforcers, do they respect resident first ordinance for them to do the job that they're supposed to do for these abandoned buildings, working with the council? Because I have a point that I want to make before my time run out. This is why I'm asking you this question.
We'll have time.
Do they supposed to adhere to the resident first ordinance that how they supposed to work with these abandoned buildings.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, typically our vacant property unit is the one more laser focused on
Vacant
yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the reason why I'm bringing this to your attention, of which I already brought an issue to your attention about a particular building that I brought to your attention. Now, if I have done my due diligence to be transparent with Shaker Square. I'm doing my due diligence to also to deal with that building that I discussed with you right under my nose in the neighborhood. Now, respectively, if I go as far to go to New York to bring some landlords to Cleveland, the local landlords should be more responsible for their buildings. And one of your chief code enforcers, another one, not the one I brought to your attention, another one of your chief code enforcers who I discussed with went behind my back and went behind your back and released a CO to a owner in that building that I request not to have done. Now, the violation was put on the building, but unfortunately, the unit did not get the CO because the violation was put on the building. But one of your chief code enforcers that I just found out today, I have the paperwork, went ahead and released the CO to the owner that's in that unit, and that building still has a code violation on it to do the, to repair the violations on the building. That building is deplorable. They know they have to put $300,000 in that building to fix up. Now, since that code enforcer released this CO to that, to that owner, so that owner could have it to run her business, the owners are still have the code violation. They fixing up the building with a Band-Aid. He did that intentionally to have the building fixed up, but he turned around and still released the CO. You cannot release the CO because you actually investigated that and put it on hold until that building was inspected. Then they are applying to putting the Band-Aid on the building. This CO should have not been released until the other inspector who I talked to today, and I had a fit, but it wasn't against him. He said that he want me to have a meeting with him and the other chief code enforcer who went over his head, because he's a chief code enforcer, to give this person the CO, and this building is still in deplorable condition, and they are putting the Band-Aids on it. Listen, I took a picture this weekend. I saw them putting the Band-Aids on it, and I come in today and find this because that chief code enforcer think that he can do what he wanted to do, and the other code enforcer, you suspended him off that building. But another chief enforcer gave the released the CO anyway, and that building is still in deplorable conditions. It has rodents. It has rodents entering into the building. There's no way this person will open up that restaurant with rodents coming in and out the back of that building to feed the residents in our black community. Listen, it won't be allowed. But that chief code enforcer disrespected me, and it's unethical for him what he did intentionally in my face, in my black community. Even though it's diverse, it's a diverse community. I'm just saying it's in the area that I live in. And I would not let a restaurant open up in a deplorable building to feed people to come in that building because that code enforcer let this person cry on his shoulder. because she wanted her CO, but the building is deplorable because I look at it every day. It's at the end of my street. I take pictures every day, and they putting a Band-Aid on that building just to fix it up so this restaurant can open. I will call the media myself. I will call the media myself and stand in front of that building with the media, and I will call out this code enforcer. I won't do it at this table because of respect of you, because you've been working with me with that building. But your code enforcer unethically and disrespected me as a council and signed off on this CO, and he shouldn't have done that unless he spoke to you. So I'm simply saying that if we're fighting, we all here at this table fighting against these deplorable buildings, but these code enforcers are taking advantage of their position and allowing these buildings to remain deplorable in our community and think it's okay. I'm going to do it this way, regardless of the residents, regardless of the council, trying to make these neighborhoods more safer, more beautiful, and also more effective, where people can walk into a restaurant where it's where it's desirable to eat. The code enforcer did not do that. That's disrespectful and it's unethical. And I found it out doing this, doing this budget hearing. Listen, I will call the meeting myself, and I will stand in front of that building, and I will call that code enforcer out. But that's disrespectful to me, because you know yourself, I've been holding this off until they got that building together. But unfortunately, he did it his way. But the other inspector who's working with me, he said he's doing everything he can to settle the meeting to rectify this situation, because he said this CO should have not been released, not with your knowledge. So I hear Councilwoman, Chair, Madam Chair, and just to put that out there, how can we sit at this table and support you and the changes you have made, and these code enforcers who've been here forever is doing whatever they want to do when they get ready against the council and against the residents of our community? I yield.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Chair.
Director, would you like to respond?
Yes, through the chair to the councilwoman, I know how much you've gone through with this building, and it's been multi-years of this for you. So I will get to the bottom of what happened here. I'm not aware. Okay.
Thank you. Councilwoman House Jones.
Good morning. Through the chair to the director, good morning. I have questions. I'm going to first just start off with what are the goals for the building and housing department as it relates to inspections, complaints received, violation notice issues? Do we have a set goal for this year?
Well, so
because I know we talk about the outputs, but based on, again, the way that I think about goals is based on our capacity, because we know we have an enormous amount of violations. And so in my mind, I feel like there should be an ideal goal of what we want to get accomplished in a year, and that is what we should compare ourselves to, and that's what this is. Yeah, okay.
through the chair to the councilwoman, obviously, we operate in multiple ways. We do systematic enforcement, which is proactive code enforcement, and then we address complaints. And we have a metric, of course, with how many service requests have come in and how many, we've gone out, and we know we've done 64,000 inspections. The goal is to always improve year over year. I mean, do I have, exactly how many? I think for me, what I'm really focused on is more proactive approach to code enforcement versus a reactive approach. So the more I can start to move in the direction of systematic enforcement, which, we've done a lot in Ward 1 and Ward 3, the bulk of it, coming up with an approach to that where, also with our AI tool, where you don't have to tell us. Like, we find it and we address it, right? Like, less of a reactionary approach, but obviously always with a mind of continuous improvement and doing better each year.
Right, and so that's to say, I'm familiar with the matrix of what we've actually done. What I'm trying to see is when you're talking about the proactive stance of where is the clear focus on this is where we should be based on the staff. You know what I'm saying? The staff, the capacity, and that's part of the thing where I was saying just as we've gone through this budget cycle, we're always talking about what we've done, and it's not necessarily clear to know what was the actual plan. Did we exceed it? Are we coming under it? And I have no way to know that based on a lot of times what is being presented. So I guess as you're in this transition to be more proactive, to be, as we move forward, to being able to know what was the goal and did we meet it or not. The other thing, as we have been reporting on the two things, the complaints that have been received, I guess how would we know if it was a unique complaint or if it was a duplicate complaint? You see what I'm saying? Because those are two different things. If 10 people call about the same house versus one person calling about 10 different houses, those are two different things. And like, how do we know the difference?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, I believe with 311 in our urban AI department, there's been a lot of effort to look at that and to say, is this a duplicate or is this 10 people calling a complaint? Because that's very different. So when 10 people call to complain, wow, you should really pay attention, right? There's a lot going on in this particular building. So I know they're working on parsing that out so it's not going to close that as a duplicate, because I think that's been a frustration for a lot of people. Oh, they already had a complaint, we're closing it as a duplicate, but obviously it becomes a work order in our system. So if we have 10 work orders for the same thing, that's problematic, because when it comes into 311, it becomes a work order in our Acela system that we have to go out on. So there's sort of a nuance there. You know, we understand 10 people have complained, but we also know we've already sent a plumber out to the building, right? So it's...
And through the chair to the director, is there a way for us to be able to some type of way close the loop, share the information, you know what I'm saying, based on the time that someone was sent out, that is then embedded in 311 that can communicate that information? Or in some cases when we talk about things are closed out and they're not, because I still don't believe that, or I don't know the status of the updates to 311,
Right.
where we know that the coding isn't necessarily in 311, it's in building and housing, and something is, the language, something is not being talked about. So can you have like a level of status where people are calling and it's like automatically closed out because it went to building and housing? Can you explain that a little bit?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, I know our IT department is coming up, so you're going to have a chance to ask that specific question. And you know, there's been a lot of thought that's gone into this, because it can be frustrating when you see, you know, something was closed. Let's say in our case, we went out, we responded, and now we changed the status to violation notice to be issued. Right? So then it closes that complaint in 311. We've done something, but it's not resolved yet. We're still having to work through our process to serve the parties and to issue the notice. So I see what your point is, and I think if there's a way to make it more transparent, we have the brilliant people to do that. And I know that they're aware of it.
Yeah, through the chair to the director, that's the part, is like, how do we communicate the information to people who are concerned and have been filing complaints? The other question is, we talk about violation notice is issued. What is the information as far as violation notices resolved? Because you can, okay, we've done that part of issuing the violation. How does that translate? Because at the end of the day, people want the issue to be resolved, right? So where is that in the violations that we're issuing?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, historically, building and housing didn't do a great job at tracking that, but we're starting to track that. So for instance, like with systematic enforcement, when we issue warning tags, we know about half of them are complying and finishing the project. So we are in the process of creating better dashboards and metrics. In fact, we work with Urban AI this year to stand up a whole dashboard on that. So stay tuned. You're going to see more.
Okay, so we said stay tuned. We're going to see more. Does that mean we are going to see more this year at some point, or stay tuned, we're going to see more as it relates to next year in 2027?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, this year, I've seen the dashboard. I think it's great. They're refining it, and then it's going to be one of the metrics the mayor looks at. Creates a dashboard for code enforcement, and I'm sure will be shared with you all.
Okay. And through the chair to the director, one of the things that I was looking at is regarding staff, compensation of staff. Wanted to see, like, I saw in some, I believe in some of the building inspectors, people are getting different rates, and I'm talking about they're in the same category. So could you explain what could be the difference in people with the same title being compensated differently?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, that would be in various pay steps. That's why.
Okay.
Longevity, how long they've been here, if they've passed and taken certain tests and gotten a premium for that. There's a few ways that could be the case.
Okay.
But with each pay band, there's step raises as well.
Okay.
So it's slightly convoluted and complicated in some respects because code enforcement staff often test, or they take different tests and pass tests, and so they get compensated for that too.
Okay. So through the chair to the director, in regards to that, when we talk about it is how hard it's been to get like building inspectors, things of that nature, are we partnering or do we know of any entities that are training building inspectors in any shape, form, or fashion?
Through the chair to the council person, yeah, we're actually working closely with Michelle Rose in formerly Ohio Means Jobs to work through a pipeline for these types of occupations, especially now that the state has opened it up a little bit more than they used to. So perhaps, a Tri-C, a way to, take kids from college. Certainly we want to stress the point, go into the trades, right? Our young people need to go into the trades. We've had a real struggle with having enough people in the trades generally, and we get our pipeline from the trades. And so, yes, we're looking at ways that we can stand up more of a robust training program for our young people who might want to come into the field. We were lucky in the past couple years to hire some younger people, which was thrilling, honestly, that they were coming into the field so early in their career, in their 20s. It's
Yeah,
great.
and so that's what I would say through the chair to the director. I know that there are some specific like inspector flow, and I don't know if that school is connected to Greater Cleveland Works through Michelle Rose, but
Yes.
we have. There is a pipeline. I would just want to say that, and sometimes it's a matter of us connecting those relationships. Similarly, as you talked about, we have this Cleveland Builds initiative that we have, and so when you talk about even for the elevator inspectors, and we get people at their end career, what would it look like? Or are we thinking about partnering with the Cleveland Builds initiative to bring that younger person that's coming in with the older person that's exiting, and at least they'll have an additional year or two to be with somebody that's truly experienced so that we can build our own? Because if they're not coming, I just feel like there is a value in building our own, and we have invested in it. So what does that look like? I know you're saying, is that a real plan for building and housing?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, it is. And we have had these conversations with Michelle Rose. And it's something in the near term that we definitely want to work with our educational institutions on fostering. Because getting people earlier in their career to come into these jobs and stay their entire career is my goal. Rather
Okay.
than having them for a few years, having them for 25 years is amazing.
Okay, so I don't think we're talking to Greater Cleveland Works thus far, so maybe that's a workforce conversation. But again, getting from the conversation to the doing, that's the part that I would like to see. The other, it's just last two things through the chair to the director. I know there was a conversation about the vacant building ordinances, and that was about, I don't know, it was like 1,400, 1,800 people who have registered for the vacant building ordinance. With that being stated, how can we help? Because there are way more you know, vacant buildings. What is ideally for community members and even my office to help to increase the number that we know with the vacant building certifications? What can be done?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, as I stated earlier, ramping up vacant building and registrations is my goal for the year. We were great at ramping up everything else, but the last piece of Residents First that we mobilized was the vacant building registrations. So we're a little bit behind the 8 ball. We're not where I would like to be. One of the reasons we're deploying the Urban AI City Detect pilot is to be able to monitor vacant buildings and identify them. If you know of vacant buildings, obviously tell us, because then we can proactively go after them, which is my goal this year. So we've started issuing affidavits of fact to cloud titles on vacant buildings that haven't come into compliance, and so we certainly would love to collaborate with your office on that.
Okay, so that's just one of the things. Through the chair to the director, you would like to, for people and community members, to let you know of if there are vacant buildings. This is something how community members can help to get people in compliance by letting us know. My last thing was, through the chair to the director, do we have a guide on how to build a house in the city of Cleveland? This is,
I know you're serious.
I have been very, very consistent in this. I hear about all these permits. I hear about going on the website to find the things. Is there a guide on how to build a house in Cleveland?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, there are a lot of smart people working on this right now, because no, there isn't such a thing. However, the idea of being able to expedite a building permit for new construction so that we can see more affordable new houses built is a high priority of the mayor. So we have an entire team on this. One of the ways that they're addressing it, not only by trying to attract a modular housing developer, but also by trying to create house plans that are already permitted, you know, that are already inspected, that you can just start building. So there's a number of ideas on this, but you're right, it's very hard to navigate that system if you've never done it. So many of our local builders like Kinez, they understand how to do it. But if it was me or you going in and saying, I want to build a house, we feel like we're navigating something incredibly complex. And so we are, you know, working on trying to minimize that complexity and create an easier way to approach that.
Through the chair to the director. Okay. How long is it going to take us? When can we expect to get a how to build a house in Cleveland? I think this is a very basic thing to do. I hear when people talk about the big, I'm not talking about them. First of all, it is helpful for the consumer, the person that wants to build a house, so that you can verify the people that come in front of you actually know what they're doing and they're not taken advantage of. As I have seen, far too many people have gotten taken advantage of because people said they knew what they were doing, but they didn't. Two, for the budding entrepreneur, new person coming into development, it's basic. When, like, this is a goal. Like, when can I expect to get a easy to read, step-by-step guide, how to build a house, so that I can give it to people who have asked me? I cannot be helpful to people. That's one of the reasons why I consistently, this is about the 3rd year I've asked for it. When can we expect it?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, I will commit to doing that for you this year.
Okay. Thank you.
And you want this to be a piece you can hand to people.
Hand to people, it should be online. It should be able to be communicated, but to give to people.
We can do this.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I do want to request something. Do you have a flow chart or a guide on when residents call 311 to report a house from beginning to end? What's the process? Do you have that?
Through to the chairwoman, in terms of just the flow of how an investigation goes with property, we don't have anything like probably documented where we could say this is what we do, but we could easily put that on the website.
Yeah,
if
that would
be
be
helpful.
very helpful.
Okay.
Because I think residents get frustrated not knowing where they are in the process when it,
And
in terms of citations.
Madam Chairwoman, also, I think what's great, and I know you're going to be talking to Kate Warren, who's running 311. We absolutely adore her. And I think one of the things that they've been doing over there is working very closely with our staff to better understand that process, so they're able to communicate that to people who call. And I know that their customer service is incredibly great now. And certainly it's fueled by all this information. So, but I see your point, and I think it's helpful for people to have a better understanding. But I think it starts with 311 call staff, and they do now understand a lot more about our process because we're not at all siloed. We're constantly communicating with them.
Got it, thank you. Councilman Jones, and then I have Councilman Slife closing us out.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, to my colleagues, to the Director of Housing. Just taking a look at your report here, just a couple of things that, where I was impressed with and some things that, certainly we need to improve upon. But overall, if I had to task it out, being here as long as I've had the opportunity, God bless me to sit at this table to represent my citizens, you're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you.
One of the issues, and it's a continuing issue, and one of my colleagues talked about it, is business owners and somehow they're able to intertwine around the system and pretty much get what they want. And so I want to work with you continuing on that issue. You probably even know what I'm talking about. The next one is, if we would move to page, I believe that's 9 of your presentation you made earlier.
Okay.
Or that's page 10. You talked about the Problem Properties Task Force. Is that open to the public or to the council people?
Through the chair to the councilman, it is open to the council people. It started small, but it's growing, and so you're absolutely invited.
I would like if you could send me some, dates when that's meeting so I can have an opportunity to step in. Who's handling on page number 11 of your presentation, who's handling the high grass issues and properties in the city of Cleveland whom I can reach out to and talk to?
So through the chair to the councilman, it depends if it's occupied or if it's a vacant property. So if it's an occupied property, it's now us. It used to be health, and so this is a big distinction between former years. So we took that over from health because we felt that we were in a better position to do it. We have more inspectors. And so with this body's approval, we passed, some legislative change that allows us to issue 1 citation a year, and then there's a cadence with which these properties go to Public Works to be serviced if the grass is still out of compliance.
If you could give me that information for those who would be handling those issues in my neighborhood, I'd be appreciative of that. I don't know if you're writing it down or not.
My
unless
staff
you
is
want me.
right.
Oh, they're right. Oh, your staff is writing it down.
Right.
Okay. So if you could get that for me, and the staff that's listening, thank you for writing everything down for the director, making her job easier. The next piece would be talking about delinquent property tax outreach with Cuyahoga County. That's found on page 12. You talk about overall outcomes at 12,677 letters that was sent to delinquent taxpayers. Can you explain a little bit about that briefly? And is there a list of those that you sent out to those people? And if so, are they just a general list, or are they broken out by ward?
Through the chair to the councilman, I certainly could give them to you, and they could be broken out by ward. They came to us through Cuyahoga County, and we worked very closely with them to do this outreach, and we, held events throughout the city over the fall, and incredibly successfully. But I know that the county wants to work with all of you and in your various wards and continue this momentum because it's been so successful.
So if you could give me that list, I would be appreciative of that. The list,
Sure.
and if it's digital, it'd be better for me, where I can really break it down for my ward, knowing who's tax delinquent and how we can work with your department in addition to the county to help our citizens get relief in their taxes. Moving on to page 13, can you also give me a breakdown where you talk about demolitions in the wards? If you could get a breakdown of the demolitions that have happened throughout the city, in particular my neighborhood.
Through the chair to the councilman, yes, this map kind of suggests it, but I would say we can give you a parcel by parcel map or a list.
Well, yeah, if you could
A
get, you
digital
know what, I'll
list.
make it easier. Just give me a list of everything that you have. That
Sure.
versus trying to break it down. If it's too difficult to break it down, then that way, I'll start looking at it. I can pretty much tell what properties are in Ward 1 and which are not.
We can break it down by ward.
Appreciate it. Also, the code enforcement metrics, which you talk about on page 15. So I'm going to say that I am really impressed at the fact that your code enforcement inspections have increased by half over the space and time to 64,398. Do you have a database on those 64,398 properties and where they're located in the city of Cleveland? And if you do have that digitally, I would love to be able to access that and take a look at that, especially as it relates to those who are in Ward 1.
Through the chair to the councilman, absolutely. This all came from the Acela database. We can do that for you. And our John Jason is listening right now, and he's probably pulling it up for you.
Thank you. Thank you, John Jason. Also, on page number 17, where you have putting residents first, this the same, it's the following page, you talk about vacant buildings registered. So do you have those vacant buildings that have fallen under registry or has been registered? And who's running that program and how I might be able to access this data?
Through the chair to the councilman, it's available. It comes through the Acela data system. We can get it to you. It's run by our vacant property unit, which is headed by Paul Kafari, and they're out being very aggressive right now.
And then moving towards, because I just want to move down, because I know that my time is only have but maybe 3 more minutes left. I might have to be put back on the back to continue to ask for information. That's a part of the budget hearings, and I appreciate the deference of the chairwoman. The shortage from budget, where you talk about on page 19, where there's $6 million, that's shortage. It seems like most of our permits and revenues are coming in from Cleveland Clinic and Case Western. Is that correct?
Yes. If you go a couple through the chairwoman.
According to your testimony earlier, you stated that some of the reasons why the permitting process was down was because of, I presume, the tariffs. And if you could kind of, to the side, you don't have to talk about it now, I'd like to really fundamentally understand how that really hit us and hurt us. And I know that that may be more in depth, and because I don't have the time, and I don't want to be mean to you, Madam Chairwoman, by saying, hey, saying to the chairwoman, I like to stop the time and ask more questions. But this is a lot of information that you've given us this morning. It sort of seemed like this should be a day-long process with your department alone, less than what we're spending on it right now. So with that being said, Madam Chairwoman, you talk about, to the director, you talk about the top 5 largest individual permit holders. Was there any other permit holders that we've lost a lot of revenue on that may not be listed here in this year's 2025 cycle?
Through the chair to the councilman, these were the largest. Obviously, we know we're going to be seeing more coming in from Bedrock. We have a number of projects pending this year, so we hope that our estimates are very conservative, but at the same time, we do know there's just been a general softening in the construction market, especially for larger projects.
And then just want to give you kudos here on your permitting process overall, where, I've been here a long time, and I know that, we've heard the mayor make presentations talking about how we were working with just paper. So it's really good to see that you're starting to put everything in a digital format, and you have different new customer features. I'd like to kind of have an opportunity, if you can give me an overall view and have someone can walk me through the process, because that's been an issue for the longest time as relates to being able to get work done and have it done in a timely fashion. And then, so great work on permitting of the process of the overall of your department. And then, as I look down here, where at the very ending of your presentation, where you have a breakdown of your goals, expand systematic code enforcement is one of your pieces. I know that the council has been talking about this issue for quite some time now, and how we can improve code enforcement. So if you could explain that, if you can put a note mark there, maybe we can talk about that, because when we talk about systematic processes, there's more than meets the eye, and we don't have the time to go through all of it. But I do want to end the note talking about one of my colleagues who brought this issue up. And Mr. Chairman, if you can give me an additional minute so I won't have to come back on the back end, but if I need to come back, I'll do that. The issue that's really important is how we do business and how fast we take care of business, and getting our business permits in and getting things out and getting things done. And this is what has been brought to my attention when I try to build a property in the city of Cleveland. When I tried to build a property in the city of Cleveland, Mr. Chairman, to our director, and I hope that this can change because my wife still wants to build a house. And you know how it is when you're married, Mr. Chairman, when your wife wants to do something. So if your wife wants to do something, you better get to the business of doing it. And so in this case, she wants to build a house, but the complexity of what we went through was there wasn't a process in the city of Cleveland whereby, as my colleague Stephanie House-Jones brought up, you have your model of what you want a house to be, and then we have to conform to those strict compliances. I think that should be eliminated. Fannie Lewis went through that whole process when she was the councilwoman about how they wanted to build nice homes. She had to fight for years till she finally was able to get the kind of home she wanted to build in her neighborhood. And now, because of her hard legwork in building that foundation, you have multiple different type of structures now in Huff. And so I would, share to the chairman, to the department, we should have flexibility on homes and how to build them. The next process would be, Mr. Chairman, bringing in new developers. New developers don't want to work in the city of Cleveland. Outside developers who came from our city, who's now developing in other neighborhoods, and I can probably name out 5 of them now. They're building some really nice homes in other neighborhoods. Refuse to pull permits here because it's difficult to go through the permitting process. And then I was told that in order to build a house in the city of Cleveland, from the beginning to the end, it would take up to 2 to 3 and sometimes 4 years to build a house in the city of Cleveland. So that's the issue. And then also financing, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, financing. There's a lot of people who do not want to finance in the city of Cleveland. So we have some real hurdles. So much of the fact that one of our colleagues got to go and invent bringing a system in to try to build homes here in the city of Cleveland and streamline the process and make it a little bit cheaper. So those are the problems that we're having, Mr. Chairman, to the director. I don't know what we could do to deal with that. And where is that as it relates to being on your radar screen is something that is not just something that I brought to you, but there has been others and other developers. So how do we begin to remedy this issue? Because that's one of the reasons why the east side is decimated and looks bad, is because it's very difficult to get the financing to build homes in our communities, 1, and 2, which is the major issue, the process down here is so lethargic, so slow, that people don't want to waste their time trying to think about how to build a house and go through all the minutia and all the politics and all the red tape.
Through the chair to the councilman, I hear you. I think the whole point of the innovative housing pilot is to try to start waking that system up and making it move faster. I would say that it shouldn't be dragging for 4 years, and I if there's one that is, that it's an outlier at this point, but I'm not going to say there isn't. There's always something. But I think, the remedy to that is multifaceted. 1, zoning.
Is who?
A zoning issue, right? We have Euclidean zoning that was imposed on the built environment where everything almost needs a variance. That makes things go slower than they need to, and I know the city has implemented form-based code in certain areas. They would love to expand that, and that's going to make things go much faster, as well as just making our permitting system more intuitive and quicker, which is the goal here. And so I have committed to your colleague to giving her a how do you build a house in Cleveland on a 1-pager, right? So I've committed to trying to simplify it that way.
Even if it's 2-page, Mr. Chairman, it's better than what you got right now. Because and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for consideration of additional time. It is a major issue, and I'm very appreciative of the fact that your administration is looking at that. And then the next question is, how fast can we get it? Because the east side can't continue to wait for development.
Agree.
So do you have an idea, or you don't know right now, you'll let me know later?
Yeah, through the council, the chairwoman to the councilman, this year we're rolling out this innovative housing pilot. So we are streamlining things as we speak. So I feel like we're going to see progress this year.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Councilman Sly, if you could close
Thank you,
out.
and I'm getting notes that our Chuck E. Cheese's has arrived, so I just have a data request. Congratulations to, first of all, to Commissioner Hamdallah, who's always very, very helpful, and also a bit of an apology because I think that my office, he's so responsive that we tend to just bombard him with any question and every question, and very often it seems like we have a question about rental registration and he'll copy, the right individual. Would it be possible, if that feels like an unfair workflow at scale, that's how people don't get stuff done, is it possible to get a org chart broken down by like individuals and what parts of the code they enforce? So like if I have a rental registration question, I can contact this individual, and if it's about a residential structure in Ward 15, it's this individual versus Ward 14, it could be someone else, and maybe that's a way that we just need to understand what individuals we could be reaching out to, so that we are effectively communicating our issues, but also not overburdening one person or the wrong person.
Through the chair to the councilman, we can do that for you.
That's it? Oh, good. Okay, thank you. Well, directors, you could hear from everyone. Housing is very important in our city. I do want to let the newer members know that one of the things that I do appreciate about you is that you do drive around, take tours in neighborhoods, and attend community meetings, which have been very helpful in our area. So thank you for that. Thank you all. We are going to break for lunch, and then when we come back, we're going to hear Department of Innovation and Technology, Community Relations, and then Office of Prevention. Thank you. Oh, what time? Council President?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
Thank you, Director.
You find your lot in Ward 1?